This is his second time in this world. He was punished by the gods for committing an unforgivable sin. Before he realized it, he was in Arad, the world of the game he had played for decades. His name was Baek Jinsung. Now he was trapped in this world. But Jinsung was a genius. He awakened an abnormal power. With it, he could destroy any monster using his black claws. And with every battle, he grows stronger. He's here to surpass everyone and destroy this world. The scene shifts, taking us now to the floating garden. A man races through the forest, dodging attack after attack as he pushes forward. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning slams into the ground, causing a massive explosion. Emerging from the dust, a gunner reveals himself, weapons drawn. But the danger isn't over. More lightning bolts streak toward him. Soon after, the imposing guardian of the guardian finally appears. She points a finger, conjuring a new attack against her opponent. She unleashes a barrage of lightning at the gunner. He fires rapidly with his guns, but she manages to block the shots. In response, the guardian hurls another powerful lightning bolt his way. Leaping into the air, the gunner aims his weapon straight at her face. He shouts and fires point blank at the guardian. Hit by the attack, she recoils, clearly feeling the blow. Following this, several energy circles begin to form around them. Seeing this, he warns that it's her area of effect attack. To defend himself, he uses his guns to deflect the incoming strikes. In the sky, an enormous amount of energy gathers, creating a vortex. Hand extended, she commands her opponent to turn to ash immediately. Then she unleashes a massive energy attack right at the gunner. Hitting the ground, the blow causes an explosion that obliterates the entire area. After the impact, the guardian drifts back, slightly floating through the destroyed garden. Seeing that he didn't survive, she gives a confident smile. Irritated by her reaction, he asks her what's so funny. Quickly, he points his gun again, catching the enemy completely by surprise. Before firing, he says goodbye, declaring that this is the end. But a bolt of lightning shoots from her body, hitting the gunner before he can take the shot. A huge explosion occurs, throwing the man far with tremendous force. Dragged along the ground, he tries to stop, but the impact was too great. Surprised, he complains that he didn't know about that ability of hers. Just then, someone grabs him and asks if he needs a hand. He says no, reminding the other not to interfere in the fight. With a smile, he says it would be better not to know anything. Without a word, the newcomer stares at his companion with a serious look. They look up and see the guardian preparing another attack. He offers help again, but the gunner tells him to stop talking. Laughing at the situation, she dares them to dodge her dragons. Suddenly, an enormous dragon made of energy appears on the battlefield. Seeing the creature, he explains it's her ultimate attack and suggests they split up. But the gunner shouts no, insisting he'll do it all alone. Ignoring the warning, the other charges forward, yelling that he'll handle the black dragon. He says he's going ahead while the gunner screams for him to come back. Turning toward the dragon, the gunner shouts at his partner for interfering. Still yelling, he demands his companion stop immediately. Meanwhile, the newcomer prepares to face the massive dragon alone. The guardian just watches as everything seems to suddenly freeze. In the sky, a huge structure of gears begins to spin rapidly. Trapped in the center, his partner stares down the dragon coming right at him. Confused, the gunner starts screaming as he watches the scene unfold. Then, the mechanism in the sky activates with full force. One of the gears materializes and traps the gunner's arm. Screaming in desperation, he says he didn't ask for help and told the other not to interfere. He continues yelling that he told him to stop because the partner entered the fight on his own. Begging to be released, he claims it wasn't his fault. As the structure closes in, he screams for them not to do it. Immediately after, the platform vanishes and the gunner begins to fall. Begging for another chance, he finally lands back on the forest floor. At the same instant, his partner speeds across the scene. He turns and says his friend would be in trouble without him. Then, he prepares to face the energy dragon head-on, but something changes on his face and he seems confused by the situation. Running to his friend, he shouts, asking what he was doing on the ground. With an eye full of injuries, he stares at his partner in silence. Remembering the past, he recalls how his partner was defeated. Full of rage, he complains about the time it took to get there. Lying on the ground, he accuses his companion of ruining absolutely everything. Hearing the accusation, his partner just watches the scene without reacting. With the image fully pixelated, he simply says he doesn't care. Shifting to the real world, the player complains that it wasn't his fault. The story then introduces the world of the game, dungeon, and fighter. In this world, many players take everything very seriously. Among them, some players stand out for their very different choices. Just then, someone appears, trying to confirm if that was really the player Jin Song. Role-playing his character, the gunner asks for help because the world is in danger. He asks them to go defeat the boss, but Jin Song asks if he wants to be carried. He then says he will fight alone and is destined for a solitary battle. Watching the scene in-game, he's surprised by the player's level of roleplay. He questions who would take a simple boss fight seriously like that. Not quite understanding, he comments that while strange, it's great for him. At that moment, he reveals he does it all to get more views on his livestream. Being introduced, his name is Jin Song Baek, a veteran player and DNF streamer. He guesses the player sought him out because of his raid content. Meanwhile, his stream chat was having fun with the whole situation. Deciding to join the joke, he says he'll do anything for the good of a rad. He then notes that the player seemed to just want attention on the stream. But suddenly, the player curses him in the chat and leaves the group. Immediately after, his computer shuts down, making him jump up. Desperate, he tries to grab the power cable before the system dies. He laments that he'll have nothing to post if the recording didn't save. Seeing the video is saved, he complains that the player could have just revived. Laughing, he jokes that it almost seemed like the other guy actually died. Clicking the game icon, he gets ready to reopen it. But suddenly, the icon on his screen starts to crack. Totally confused, he doesn't understand what is happening at that moment. Then, his entire room begins to shatter as if it were made of glass. Even his shelves and action figures begin to fall apart. With the floor disappearing, he starts to fall while screaming desperately. Understanding nothing, he asks what is happening to his room. Immediately, an imposing figure appears right in front of him. Grabbed by her, he looks up completely unresponsive. Accusing the young man, she says he interfered and broke the blade. Already in the game world, he asks who she is and where he is, saying he must take responsibility. With that, the floor breaks once again and he falls. Continuing the fall, he is now in a sky alongside a giant whale. Meanwhile, he heads toward the water, passing several birds. Thrown with force, he slams against a large rock wall. Soon after, he falls into the middle of the forest, coughing heavily from the impact. Still on the ground, he grabs the sword and asks what the hell happened there. Suddenly, he notices something strange and is completely shocked by the situation. Looking at his own hands, he asks what was wrong with them. But before he can understand, an explosion throws him far away with great force. Amidst the flames, he can only scream from the pain of the attack. Meanwhile, a horde of monsters walks through the burning forest. At that moment, a mysterious woman steps near one of the creatures on the ground. Furious, she asks who he is and says he will regret it. He tries to apologize but points out that her fire seems worse. She tells him to shut up and attacks the monsters, promising vengeance for the forest. Desperate, he tries to flee as a giant monster advances on him. Running through the chaos, he looks around, understanding nothing about the situation. In the rush, he ends up tripping and falling flat on the ground. With the fall, he rolls down an embankment and sinks into a river. Trying to get up, he emerges from the water to catch his breath quickly. He screams as he sees more monsters getting closer and closer. The forest burns intensely all around him. She orders them to find him, saying he hasn't gone far. Hidden behind a rock, he notices goblins and Taos. He realizes these are all monsters from the game DNF. Looking at his own body, he identifies his class, Dark Knight. Finally, he wonders if he's actually inside the world of DNF. Remembering everything, he laments that he just wanted to play his game in peace. Not knowing what to do, he wonders how to get back to the real world. Suddenly, a surprise attack shatters the tree behind him. With the noise, a Tao monster reveals itself right behind him. From above, the woman just watches the whole situation unfold. At that moment, he notices the arrival of a very familiar figure. Bursting onto the scene, a new warrior appears amidst the chaos. He stomps hard on the head of a fallen monster. Seeing the woman, he questions how she managed to reach this place. Looking at the warrior, he recognizes the famous Slayer class from DNF. Right after, he also identifies Syria, the very first NPC in the entire game. Hearing the conversation, he realizes this dialogue is part of the tutorial. He understands that the Slayer is another real player doing the quest. Above the character's head, his name is visible to everyone. Sword in hand, the player prepares for combat. Advancing quickly, he jumps and lands a direct hit on the enemy. Retreating slightly, she counterattacks with a fireball. Shortly after, she launches several fire projectiles at her opponent, but the warrior dodges all the attacks with agility and speed. Seizing the chance, he jumps high to use one of his skills. Crashing down, he hits the ground, causing a massive explosion. The impact throws the woman backward with force. Recovering, she screams and prepares another fire attack. To end the combat, the warrior advances. Seeing the attack coming, she tries to defend herself, but it was too late. With a precise cut, he runs her through with his blade. Hit squarely by the blow, she is thrown far away. Impressed, he comments that seeing it up close was much more intense. Looking at the fallen woman, he finds the whole scene brutal, but she stands up and says she now understands how he got through. Even wounded, she keeps talking about a tragedy that happened here. He realizes that being a player, the Slayer might be able to help him. Running towards him, he tries to shout to get his attention. Suddenly, a gear mechanism appears blocking his path. Meanwhile, the woman laments that she cannot extinguish the flames here. The mechanism clamps onto his neck, stopping him from speaking. Realizing the situation, he notes he can neither move nor speak. Then a mysterious voice tells him to continue, leaving him totally surprised. She then warns that they can continue if they want to risk their lives. Thanking the woman, the player turns and leaves with his partner. Hidden in the brush, he watches the two walking away, leaving him behind. At that moment, the gear mechanism starts moving again. With a quick movement, the object finally releases from his face. Catching his breath, he regrets losing the others and questions the mechanism. Outraged, he decides he won't let this stop him. Shouting in anger, he says he won't be stopped by anyone there. But right after, he changes his mind and simply says he gives up. Changing scenery, he finds himself in a dark and very scary forest. He then remembers that this is the game's tutorial dungeon. Seeing several eyes in the dark, he needs to hurry to catch up to the player. Hearing a noise, he turns quickly. Several shadow monsters appear, making him scream in fright. Surrounded, he identifies them all as ghouls from the game. Yelling at the creature to stay back, he says he has a weapon. The creature simply ignores him and attacks. Immediately following, it grabs him forcefully by the neck. Then the monster reveals its full form, scaring the guy badly. Running desperately, he screams that the monsters don't look like the ones in the game. He questions why they are so strong when they are weak in the game. He hears a scream nearby and turns quickly. Recognizing the voice, he realizes Saria is right nearby. Seeing the fight, he yells that the Slayer player must be in that direction. Without wasting time, he runs as fast as he can in that direction. Approaching, he sees the Slayer using an ice ability against the boss. Nearby, Saria is completely trapped inside a block of ice. With great force, the ice creature breaks free from the frozen prison. Then, the boss of that dungeon, Gulgish, finally reveals himself completely. Facing the monster, he just observes the situation, totally surprised. Running up to the player, he asks if they can talk a little. At that moment, the monster attacks with his weapon in their direction. Not understanding reaction, he tries to call the player again. Hit full on, the player is hurled away by the ice attack. With the impact of the magic, an ice spike almost hits him. After the blow, the Slayer ends up completely trapped inside a block of ice. Seeing the scene, the boss warns them not to get in his way. Desperate, he bangs on the ice and yells for the player to wake up soon. He wonders why the guy isn't reacting at all. While distracted, one of the monsters attacks him from the side. Getting hit, the creature's claws make a cut on his chest. Screaming in pain, he realizes the wound is real and serious. Another monster advances, but he manages to block the attack with his sword. With difficulty, he holds the creature while screaming in pain. In a panic, he yells that it hurts and he's gonna die. Pushing against the sword, the monster bared its teeth at him. Not wanting to die, he keeps screaming for his life. Gathering his remaining strength, he slices the monster in half with everything he has. Looking to the side, he seems surprised. After defeating the monster, he prepares for the others arriving. No time to think. More creatures advance full force. Holding the sword, he begins to understand the capabilities of this new body. With a confident smile, he turns to face the horde. Using the sword, he begins to slice through every creature in his path. He remembers the skills he saw for over 10 years. He recalls the movements engraved in his memory. Imagining the skills, he realizes he can use them all right now. Just thinking about the blow, his body executes the movement on its own. Facing the monster, he warns that the enemy is already defeated, but the boss reacts, launching a massive ice attack. Seeing the blow, a skill card appears right in front of him. Using an uppercut, he cuts through the ice and advances on the boss. Without stopping, he continues with a sequence of slashes. He executes a basic attack followed by a quick cut. He continues the sequence with another basic attack against the monster. Finishing the combo, he lands a final devastating blow on the boss, but the monster manages to create an enormous ice wall to defend itself. A large frozen structure appears in the middle of that forest. Believing he has won, the boss starts laughing confidently. Suddenly, a strong light illuminates the battlefield. Seizing the opening, he advances straight at the monster, catching it off guard. The monster just stares at him with a surprised look. Without pausing, he uses his sword and lands several cuts on the boss. Confused, the monster doesn't seem to understand what's happening. He then explains that the system allows for canceling and linking attacks. As a result of the sequence, the boss starts shattering into ice. Revealing the system's name, he says it's time break. He concludes by saying this is the basic technique for a dark night. Even defeated, the boss lay twisted on the ground, writhing in pain. Almost out of strength, he knew he had to restore the magic circle quickly. Wasting no time, he drove his sword straight through the monster's head. Burying the blade deep, he muttered that he'd almost forgotten how tenacious ghouls could be. Finally finished, the monster began to slowly fade away before his eyes. Right after, a massive magic circle formed on the ground near Saria. Watching the scene unfold, he assumed the dungeon event had just begun. Totally confused, he just stared at the mysterious card in his hands. Holding the item, he questioned exactly what that card was doing there. Suddenly, the card shattered, unleashing a blinding light across the entire area. From that light, the same woman as before emerged in front of him, floating imposingly. Sick of the situation, he yelled that he couldn't take this again. Impressed, she praised him for completing the first step of the challenge. Filled with rage, he recognized the woman and spoke her name. He then remembered she was the goddess of wisdom, Nymir. He continued, stating she was a being with the power to travel between worlds. Irritated, he shouted that she was just a game character and questioned everything. She explained that she had been watching him because he could complete the mission. Confused, he complained that she had completely ignored his question. He recalled that in the game, Blade meant the same thing as adventurer. This made him wonder if she had summoned him to be something else entirely. With a smile, the goddess just pointed at him, making him scream. He refused to help and told her to send him back home. She replied that all of this was his responsibility from now on. Not understanding, he shouted back, questioning what responsibility she was talking about. Suddenly, a sharp object shot forward and pierced the guy's forehead. With that, countless memories from the past began to surface in his mind. He remembered how he had ruined everything and how it had all gone wrong. While he was paralyzed, the goddess turned and walked away from him. After the vision, he brought his hand to his face, feeling intense pain. Kneeling on the ground, he felt incredibly sick after receiving all that information. The goddess then explained that the destroyed blade had been a human from the same dimension. She continued, saying that due to arrogance, the Time Lords had needed to intervene. Looking right at him, she stated that all of it was his total responsibility. Shocked, he wondered if the ranger really had been a real human. Seeing his reaction, the goddess just gave a very subtle smile. Next, she showed that a corruption was spreading throughout all of Arad. Asking about it, he heard that the corruption had disrupted the blade's tests. She warned that if things continued like this, the world would face a distorted future. So she asked him to become her guide and lead the blades. Totally confused, he questioned what these tests and this guide business were. A memory showed that the player was supposed to fight while Syria purified the circle. He realized that if he hadn't been there, Syria might have been defeated. He understood that the corruption was a bug and the guide had to stop it. With a nod, the goddess confirmed that was exactly his job. Saying that he understood, the goddess threw him from a very high place. She ordered him to find the source and purify the world's corruption. While falling, he complained that she acted like he had already accepted. She then promised she would send him back once the mission was accomplished. Irritated, he yelled that he needed some kind of ability for such a weak character. Suddenly, his fall took him to a location filled with various red crystals. She explained she couldn't grant powers, but she could give him an item. Seeing the items, he recognized them as rare avatars and epic equipment. Then he noticed an option and immediately had a brilliant idea, but the goddess was astonished when he said no to her initial offer. Ignoring the others, he asked for the king's contract item permanently. Agreeing to the request, she granted him the power he had chosen. Right after, a crown appeared and materialized in front of him. With that, the item entered his body, finalizing the contract between them. After receiving the power, he prepared himself for what was coming next. Surprised by the fire, he looked at his hands, disbelieving the power, asking if there was anything else. He begged for infinite stamina or something like that. As a response, she freed him from bodily needs and physical stress. He tried to complain that wasn't it, but she interrupted him. She warned that she wouldn't summon him again, so he would have to find her himself. Then she added that a part of her could be found in the dimensional corridor. Saying she awaited his deeds, the goddess finally disappeared from before him. Back in the forest, he complained about being in that situation once again. Spotting the player, he tried to play it off by saying he had terrible lag. At that, the player's partner asked if the adventurer was feeling alright. Questioning the situation, the player wondered if the lag had stopped him from moving. Pointing into the distance, he told them to look at the magic circle that had appeared. Wasting no more time, he decided the best option was to follow the two of them. Reaching the end of the forest, the sun finally began to rise on the horizon. Continuing down the path, he followed the two of them to a village nearby. Hidden, he wondered if that place was the Elvengard village. Being exactly like in the game, the place seemed very familiar to him. Yet, he still thought that whole situation felt too unreal. But despite everything, a single thing remained very clear in his mind. Remembering the ranger, he decided he would prevent deaths like that from happening. Running full tilt, he yelled that he was going to survive in that world no matter what. Walking through the forest, he grasps his mission, correct the corrupted history. As he moves, he investigates his new situation. He opens his interface to check his initial discoveries. He's surprised to find the practice sword back in his inventory. Did Goddess Namir return it? After gathering some fruit, he decides he's just about finished here. Next, he opens his personal information window. Many functions are missing, even his HP isn't showing. He focuses on his second major discovery, attributes. His adventurer reputation is terribly low. Remembering the goddess's words, he knows he needs to reach the dimensional corridor. But to find a way home, he must raise his reputation first. Checking requirements, the dungeon demands over 38,000 reputation points. He checks his status. He has exactly 6. Continuing onward, he concludes Goddess Namir isn't all that benevolent. Even if he reaches the corridor, he doubts her true intentions. Fighting his way through, he wonders if she'll ever actually let him return home. At nightfall, he lights a campfire to rest in the forest. Eating a fruit, he realizes he feels neither hunger nor satisfaction. He recalls Namir stating corruption would end Arad, but her real goal was reviving the creator god to remake the world. That meant total destruction. The world would shatter. The entire universe would break into unrecoverable pieces. Helping Namir meant the complete annihilation of Arad. Lying by the fire, he reflects on this terrifying discovery. He steels himself. He just needs to get home. This is just a game. Focused, he vows to do whatever it takes to survive. Standing on a cliff, he shouts his destination, Hendenmeyer. Arriving at the capital entrance, he wonders how many days the journey took. But at the gate, guards cross their spears and order him to halt. Stopped by the guards, he stares at the crossed spears. Confused, he wonders what's happening. Suddenly, he remembers a crucial forgotten detail. There's an entry fee for the gate. Just then, a man named Linus appears, asking if he needs fee money. Approaching closely, he confirms he knows the man, leaving Linus visibly confused. Then it clicks. Linus is the NPC who provides the fee. He grabs the blacksmith and asks for the money. Linus asks why he should help, explaining he wouldn't just give money to a wanderer. Remembering the mission, he decides to gain his trust with a dramatic scene. He invents a story about a sick friend with a ghost arm. Begging for help, he claims his friend will soon be consumed by the disease. Linus just watches silently, showing no reaction to the tale. Facing the silence, he fears his emotional appeal failed. Suddenly, tears hit the ground. Linus starts crying unexpectedly, totally surprising the young man. Covering up, Linus claims it's just dust in his eye. He tosses over a sword and other items saying he won't miss them. Very grateful, he bows as the blacksmith walks away heavily laden. Before leaving, Linus wishes him luck in saving his friend. Running through the city, he celebrates finally returning to Hendenmeyer. Holding the document, he's relieved he remembered the official license profile. When his turn comes, he feels a twinge of guilt for deceiving the blacksmith, but he pushes it aside. Linus is just an NPC.
Passage cleared.
The great city gates finally open for him. Passing through the entrance, he spots several other familiar characters hanging around. Seeing the city for the first time, he's awestruck by its beauty. Walking down the main street, he shouts that the realism is incredible. Confident, he declares that only those who challenge themselves emerge victorious. Suddenly, the fighter Chobong appears, taking him by surprise. He recognizes her as the famous local tournament champion. Saying he looks strong, she invites him to a fierce battle. Suddenly, text messages start floating in the air around them. Other players are mocking him for talking to himself constantly in the city. Desperate, he realizes everything he said was sent to a public chat. With a small explosion on the ground, he screams in pure embarrassment. Fleeing, he remembers the ranger used to do the same thing. Seeing everyone laughing, he yells at them to stop the mockery immediately. Scene change. He continues running aimlessly through the big city streets. After a long run, he stops, hoping no one followed. Determined to stop talking to himself, he spots something familiar nearby. He faces the sign for the famous Moonlight Tavern. Inside, he remembers coming here often when he was weak. Since the place is packed with users, he sees a chance to gather valuable information. Walking through the tavern, he observes other adventurers resting. Upon entering, he encounters a group of adventurers staring seriously at him. Intimidated, he wonders if he should just leave. Instead, he approaches the bar where the owner promptly greets him. Not knowing what to say, he ends up asking for a glass of milk. Changing the subject, he asks about suspicious occurrences, and she replies that he is suspicious. Thinking a moment, she recalls there might be something strange here after all. She points to a large anvil in the corner, surprising him. Looking at it, he says it's interesting but not what he was looking for. Just then, Saria enters the tavern with another girl, starting a familiar dialogue. He realizes the other girl is a fighter class user doing the quest. In a hurry, the two pass him and run to the back of the tavern. Then, he hears a familiar voice complaining about newbies who never listen. A man continues grumbling that rookies always think they know everything. Immediately, a young man asks him to show respect as these are the captain's orders. Shocked, he can't believe what he just heard from that group. He wonders why the famous Order of the Wolf Knights is here. The Iron Wolf Knight Order serves the Empire, and they're currently investigating the tower. Players usually quest with them, but way off in a different part of the map. That's why he finds it so weird that the Knight Order just showed up in a bar. Then he remembered Fiona and Dan are NPCs you're supposed to find in the Tower Museum. Lenny's usually in the vestibule. None of them should be in the tavern right now. Watching them talk, he realizes they've already gone past that point in the storyline. When the knights start chasing the female user, he suspects this must be that corruption everyone talks about. Seeing the duo say goodbye and leave the tavern, he realizes he needs to act. He decides to follow them to the tower to see what goes down. On the way, he hears that the captain is interested in the female explorer for some reason. Now his new objective is to figure out which of the three knights is corrupted. To fix this, he gets ready to stop them from advancing any further. But at the entrance, the guards cross their spears and block his path. Tired of being stonewalled, he attacks the guards with a quick, powerful strike. From a distance, a mysterious man just watches the chaos begin. To get inside, he remembers Roger Levin and runs off to find the NPC. When he gets there, the assistant says Roger is traveling and she can't help. Falling to his knees, he despairs at the news and apologizes for the mess. Punching the ground, he wonders how an NPC can just leave their shop like that. Just then, the mysterious man calls out to him from behind, confusing him a bit. Then the man walks up to the tower guards to talk about getting in. Confirming Roger Levin's pass, the guard checks the document for a moment. With passage cleared, the guard authorizes the mysterious man to enter the tower. Seeing a chance, Jin Song grabs his hand and asks if he's absolutely serious. Running inside, he celebrates being able to form a party and enter with him. Thanking him profusely, he says the stranger made everything so much easier, but the man warns that he's been watching him in town for quite a while. Laughing hard, the man says his role-playing style is hilarious. Stammering, he tries to say it's not role-play, but the other guy keeps laughing. The man promises to kill Behemoth for him just because he made him laugh like that. Shocked by the offer, he declines the help, saying he can't accept it. Desperate, he starts shouting to cancel the party, breaking the alliance with the player. Switching to the other player's view, he sees the message that Jin Song has left. Staring at the empty screen, He regrets the departure because he thought the guy was really funny. Then he wonders why he couldn't see his username before. Back at the tower, Jin Song breathes a sigh of relief seeing the immense structure from the inside. Heading up the stairs, he decides he needs to avoid the player who him earlier. Reaching a corridor, he stops and stares down the long path ahead. Lost, he wonders where the three went and realizes he needs to hurry. Hearing footsteps, he spins around quickly to see what's happening on the staircase. That's when he sees Fiona complaining to Dan, who couldn't even dodge the attack. While Dan says he was protecting the female explorer, Lenny tells him to stop worrying. Surprised, he witnesses the knights abandoning the user and starts suspecting everything. That's when he realized the lower-ranked knights weren't the corrupted ones. His suspicion fell on Captain Pawn, the leader giving all the orders. Running up the stairs, he climbs as fast as he can to reach the top. Taking a huge leap, he tries to cut corners and save time on the climb. Worried about the encounter, he fears the corruption might spread to the others. Saying he needs to hurry, he flies through a horde of monsters. On the way, a larger monster attacks him with a powerful bite. Feeling the attack, he realizes the flying creature wounded him on the face. To defend himself, he quickly opens his system window to grab an item. Grabbing the sword, he hits the head of the monster that was holding him earlier. But right after, several other creatures fly in his direction to attack. Then he manages to block the monster's advance. Realizing he let his guard down, he prepares for the next imminent attack. That's when he saw he was already surrounded inside the tower dungeon. Then a bigger monster prepares an attack while he fights the smaller ones. Defeating one of the monsters, the biggest one charges straight at him. Holding the hilt tightly, he uses all his strength in the attack. Using the enemy's spear, he manages to land a solid kick on the monster. Next, another monster tries to hit him, but he parries the attack. And jumping high, he goes in for the attack. With a sword strike, he unleashes an attack against the creatures. After the attack, he backs off and stares down the two remaining larger monsters. Seeing the complicated situation, he realizes it's going to be tough to keep fighting alone. Surrounded on all sides, he sees he has no time to counter the attacks. When the leader prepares to strike, he tries to use one of his skills. But the monster is faster and launches a slash that destroys the ground. Throwing him far, the blow stops him from continuing because his mana ran out. Exhausted, he regrets not leveling up before going to the tower. Suddenly, a huge red figure appears right behind him on the spot. Leaping over him, the figure launches an attack that sets all the monsters on fire. His blow hits the enemies who start burning in the middle of combat. Seeing the statue, he remembers there was a mechanic like this in the game. Then he recalls that at the end of the line of statues, there was a surprise. Running between the creatures, he advances quickly to the end of the tower corridor. Reaching the destination, he celebrates finding a full recovery circle on the floor. With his strength renewed, he attacks the flying monsters that were surrounding him earlier. His blows begin hitting the creatures squarely, taking out several at once. In a quick sequence, he manages to defeat all the monsters remaining in the hall. After the battle, he stops for a moment to finally catch his breath. That's when he realizes he started leveling up after defeating so many enemies. With a new weapon, he says he's going to take this chance to get stronger right now. Preparing a fresh attack, the monsters rush the adventurer together. He uses a new skill, attacking the creatures with a cross-shaped cut. As his minions fall, the monster leader just watches the fight. Jumping into the air, he charges straight in to attack the strongest monster in the pack. Shouting the technique's name, he unleashes a rapid 3-hit sequence on the enemy, then he spins with his weapon. He uses a whirlwind attack to clear the area. Pumped from the fight, he says he feels like the main character in a novel. Then he remembers that choosing the king's contract was a great decision. Challenging the remaining monsters, he yells for them all to come at him at once. Just then, the true boss of that floor finally appears in the middle of the great hall. Seeing the new enemy, he says the monster should have shown up sooner. With a smile, he adds that was back when he was still weak. Named Lacheus, the boss says he spotted an intruder dirtying his tower. He then orders all the dragonoids to start cleaning the place immediately, and Jin Song dodges the incoming attack. Dodging the blow, he uses his sword to ready a lightning-fast counterattack. With a precise cut to the leg, he manages to wound the monster and open up some space. Then he uses the shadow slash skill to finish off the enemy for good. Right then, another monster charges in. The monster thinks it hit him, but Jin Song manages to dodge at the last second and prepares for his next move. Mocking the enemy, he says the monster is too slow to hit him. Enraged, the creature stares him down from up close, ready to attack again. Jin Song misses and hits the pillar. Joking around, he seems to be enjoying the enemy's confusion, and the creature lands a solid hit on his face. Using the brief cut skill, he destroys several monsters with a single blow. Passing between two enemies, he shouts as he advances toward the next battle. Launching an attack at the ground, he creates a large ice zone in the hall. Because of this, the small dragons flying around are forced to retreat. So he takes the chance to attack both creatures in the air at the same time. Annoyed with the monsters, he screams for those little mosquitoes to just die already. He uses a skill to attack the ground, but the creatures get confused by the blow. Just then, one of the dragons hits him and the system explains his combo. Unable to skip time, he needs to use the skills in the order he chose. Trying to hit the targets, he gets irritated at having to use the combos in sequence. Frustrated with the situation, he realizes he wasted the same skill twice. Getting hit, he yells that his life depends on this now. It's not a game. Right after, one of the monsters snatches him with its tail. Throwing him to the ground, the monster's attack takes him completely by surprise. But he uses the monster's tail to propel himself and land a kick. Recovering his stance, he readies his weapon to attack the monster's head. And out of nowhere, a spear pierces the monster's chest. Lakias prepares to launch a much stronger attack. Then the monster fires an energy beam toward the adventurer in the hall. Ignoring his pain, he prepares his most powerful skill to counter-attack the boss. Using Great Wave, he launches an immense energy slash against the monster. Hit head-on, the tower boss ends up caught by surprise by the attack. Knowing a boss wouldn't go down easily, he gets ready to continue the fight. But the monster fires back, shooting another energy beam that hits him squarely. Being pushed back, he tries to resist the force of the attack with his body. Gathering his strength, he manages to stop the beam, creating a stalemate between them. With great difficulty, he holds off the attack, trying not to give in to the enormous pressure. Watching the scene, the boss seems to enjoy the fight, opening his mouth as if smiling. With a roar, the monster releases an energy explosion that swallows the whole hall. After the explosion, Jin Song is badly hurt, the boss's spear right in his face. He stands up with difficulty, but still ready to continue the battle, and a blow hits him, throwing him against a pillar in the hall. Without strength, he tries to catch his breath while preparing for the next move. Boss Lakias also seems tired, but he's still standing and ready to fight. Holding his weapon, he grips the handle with all the strength he has left. Screaming in pain, he uses his own head to headbutt the monster hard. Seizing the opening, he uses a brief cut to attack the boss up close. Trying to execute another skill, he falls to the floor, too weak to remain standing. With a mocking tone, the boss asks if he's finally done fighting. Then the monster attacks, but he teleports away. Even wounded, he starts using a sequence of skills. Confused, the boss asks what he's mumbling about in this moment of battle. Yelling with all his might, he releases a large amount of power. With the accumulated power, he lands a devastating blow right on the boss's face. Surprised by the hit, the monster can't react in time to defend itself. Using the hop smash skill, he attacks with tremendous force. Not understanding the weight, the monster wonders where so much pressure suddenly came from. With a smile on his face, he reveals the secret of his new strength. Revealing the essence of the combo, he shows that it isn't about evasion. Instead, the goal was to accumulate power to deal explosive damage at the end. Taking all that damage, the tower boss starts coughing up a lot of blood. But in a final effort, he releases a powerful energy aura toward him. The energy expands through the hall, completely surrounding the young adventurer. Preparing for the end, he uses the fifth and final skill of his combo. The more combos, the greater the damage, reaching 200% on the fifth hit. Launching his final attack, he releases a gigantic wave of energy against the boss. With the Great Wave skill, he attacks with 200 of his power. After the great explosion, the sky tower finally goes silent again. A strong light takes over the tower hall after the final blow. With a devastating explosion, the energy wave hits the boss head-on. Being completely destroyed, the monster's body is shattered by the adventurer's attack. Landing on the boss's remains, he finally manages to end the long battle. Trying to catch his breath, he says the dungeon's name, Dragonoid Nest. Falling exhausted to the ground, he confirms that he finally managed to clear that floor of the tower. But right after, a group of knights arrives attracted by the noise of the fight. Seeing all the bodies, they wonder what happened and spot the young man. Then one of the knights warns the vice captain that there's a person on the ground there. Stepping over a corpse, he confirmed the dragonoid nest was clear. Exhausted, he admitted it had been a tough fight. He should have asked for help. Raising his sword, he steeled himself to continue exploring the sky tower. Checking his stats, he cheered. Level 15 and his HP was fully recovered. Pumping, he said he'd grab the loot and head to the next floor. But looking around, he realized there were no items on the ground. Confused, he wondered why the monsters hadn't dropped any loot. Then, the vice captain asked if he was the one who killed all the monsters. Hearing the voice, he jumped. He hadn't expected to run into that person here. The man asked who he was, and the young man recognized the name Hartz von Kruger. With an attack, several blood spikes shot toward the adventurer. Surrounded, he found himself cornered by the knights and the powerful vice captain. The man ordered him to identify himself and state his affiliation. Furthermore, he demanded the young man explain how he knew his name. Trapped, he wondered how he could not know someone so famous in the game. He remembered Hartz was the only NPC ever to receive a personality nerf. Getting no answer, the vice captain grabbed him, and he explained how he knew him. When asked about the pass, he said he got it from Roger Levin. With a serious look, Hartz ordered him to show the pass for verification. Flustered, he said he didn't have the pass, leaving the vice captain confused and irritated. Stammering, he made up a lie. The pass was with a friend downstairs, so Hartz ordered him to lead the way to this friend to confirm the story. Surrounded on all sides, he regretted running into that particular night. Worried about time, he knew the female player had already cleared the vestibule dungeon. That meant she was heading straight for the top floor chamber. On the way, she would join forces with several NPCs for help in the final battle. Among those NPCs was Captain Bond, the real target of all the corruption. Fearing Bond was already corrupted, he worried about what might happen. As the group descended, the knight suddenly stopped, noticing something strange. One knight turned as if he had perceived movement. Seizing the chance, he attacked the knight with a shadow cut to break free. Surprised, the vice captain wondered where he'd gotten another blade so quickly. With his spear, he managed to deflect an attack and defend the nearby soldier. Then, the vice captain realized the kid had just vanished right in front of him. Reappearing far from the group, he propelled himself forward to create even more distance. Annoyed by the escape, Hart said he only used cheap tricks and challenged him. Ignoring the challenge, he warned he was going to use another skill to escape. Then he created a massive burst of light and said it was time to go. As he fled, the vice captain yelled, ordering him to stop right there. Checking his inventory, he noticed a strange new item in there. But suddenly, a huge weapon was hurled in his direction with tremendous force. Taken by surprise, he screamed as the item hit him mid-air. When he caught the object, he realized it was actually a bomb with a fuse. The bomb then exploded right between them, separating the two groups. Frustrated by the escape, the vice captain took out his anger by hitting one of the knights. Enraged, the vice captain shouted in frustration at the fugitive who got away. Then he noticed something strange on the ground left behind by the explosion. Seeing the substance on the floor, he said the fugitive was just a weakling. From afar, he spotted the young man standing still, staring back without fear. Holding the bomb, the kid prepared to use the item and keep running. Seeing the scene, Hartz and the knights went on alert at the new threat. Running, Hartz shouted that he would kill the terrorist when he finally caught him. Laughing, the young man said the explosion didn't do much damage. It was just loud. Happy with his plan, he thanked Shuja for the useful items from the tavern. Changing scenes. The sun began to set on the sky tower's horizon. Running up the stairs, he realized the sun was almost down. Meanwhile, Syria and the others wondered where the missing fighter was. From a distance, he finally managed to spot the group he was looking for in the tower. Surprised, Syria noticed his presence and pointed him out as another explorer. Then the man, Aganzo, said he should get to a safe place quickly. At that, Bond told them not to get in his way. He didn't want trouble. Recognizing the voice, the young man realized he had finally found Captain Bond in the tower. Running up, he announced he'd finally found him and prepared to attack. Right after, the vice captain arrived at the scene too, following the trail of chaos. Surprised, he hadn't expected the man to follow him up here so quickly. Enraged, the vice captain called him a very brave bastard. Seeing the commotion, the captain asked Hartz what was happening down there. So Hartz ordered the captain to capture the kid causing trouble in the tower. Surrounded, he found himself cornered between the captain and the swordsman, Aganzo, in the hallway. Realizing he had nowhere to run, he regretted ending up in this situation. Furious, the vice captain warned him to prepare for the consequences of his actions. Suddenly, a light appeared in the distance, catching the young adventurer's attention. Pointing, he yelled that there was a flying man trying to pee on them from up above. Looking up, they couldn't see anything, just the tower's architecture. Jumping amidst the confusion, he shouted angrily as he tried to flee the scene. The vice captain and captain were stunned by the escape maneuver. The destroyed wall completely separated the group from the fleeing adventurer. He propelled himself away, managing a quick escape. Hitting the ground, he paused for a moment to catch his breath from the chase. Regretting the missed opportunity, he noticed the corruption hadn't fully spread yet. As the group moved off, he decided he needed to purify them before the next dungeon. Meanwhile, the fighter asked who that guy was. Syria just said it was strange. Suggesting a break, Bond said they could rest a bit on the next floor. Climbing more stairs, he kept trailing the group despite being utterly exhausted. Tired of the climb, he wondered if they had reached the next dungeon yet. Seeing the scene unfold, he yelled for Bond to stop, trying to prevent what was about to happen. Too late. He saw Bond attack a gonzo who fell to the ground, wounded, desperate. He couldn't believe he was too late to stop the attack. Bond told the gonzo not to run. The pain was just muscle soreness. Climbing the stairs, the young adventurer watched the scene unfold from a distance. Hidden, he watched and wondered if everything was still okay over there. Deciding to act, he vowed to keep an eye on Bond until he uncovered the truth. Then he realized the captain wasn't acting strangely or corrupted at all. On the contrary, Bond wasn't trying to hurt anyone or control the knight's order. From hiding, he watched the captain interact with the dungeon adventurer group. To his surprise, the captain seemed completely normal. No signs of corruption. Aganzo said they needed to investigate the layout to find the master of this place. So he and the captain split up to investigate the tower floor. Meanwhile, Syria talked to the fighter about the stranger they encountered earlier. Focusing on the scene, he noticed something off about the captain. Watching Bond say goodbye to the fighter, he told himself his suspicions were right. Even with dialogue identical to the game, he still found it all very suspicious. He wondered, if the captain wasn't the corrupted one, then who was? On second thought, he remembered the tavern might have been a detail left out of the game. Suddenly, several stone monsters attacked the group, surprising everyone in the corridor. The creatures advanced, ready to attack the captain and the nearby adventurers. Annoyed by the reception, Bond yelled for the boss of this place to show himself immediately. Watching the group fight, the young man wondered who this boss the captain mentioned was. Remembering the card he obtained, he feared Bond might also turn into a card if he died. He realized the truly corrupted one was actually the dungeon's boss monster itself. With this new discovery, everything made much more sense. Meanwhile, the captain wondered where Hart and the young man he was chasing had gone. Amidst the confusion, he knew he needed to find a way into the fight. Walking through the area, he looked for a way to help the group in battle. Suddenly, one of the enemy NPCs prepared to draw their sword and attack. GSD defeated the monsters with rapid attacks. They walked over the monster debris, advancing down the tower corridor. Charon said she was always impressed. He told her to stop joking around. Seeing they had already advanced so far, Charon said they must be getting close. Begging their pardon, GSD prepared to attack the young man hidden nearby. With a powerful slash, he launched a devastating attack at the adventurer. Surprised by the attack, Sharon asked what he was doing. Blocking the blow, the young man said the man had mistaken him for monster. Oganzo noticed he couldn't quite control the pulses coming from his arm. Holding his sword, Jinsong wondered if he had just almost died right then. Sharon asked why he was following the group. He asked for a favor in return. He then revealed he knew both of them, GSD and Charon, the dungeon NPCs. Knowing they would join the final battle, he asked to join them. Charon refused, saying there was no reason for it. He realized the problem. Aware of their distrust, he knew he needed to earn their confidence to proceed. Covering his eyes, he told them they would need his help in the dungeon. He revealed the man was Duncan, the great master swordsman of that dungeon. Surprised by the revelation, Charon couldn't believe he knew his identity. Smiling, he turned to the group and asked what they thought. Confused, they said no one was supposed to know the swordsman's true identity. Oganzo confirmed such a person existed, but that wasn't his name. Desperate, he couldn't understand why Oganzo didn't know the swordsman's name. Remembering the lore, he realized the update hadn't erased everything. It had changed it. Just then, the stone knights rose again, preparing for another attack. The swordsman noted they seemed to have guests and needed to prepare for a fight. Concentrated, he tried to recall the game's original story to understand the changes. Then he remembered a similar name from the game and understood what happened. The man's real name was Grandson of the Tower of Despair, a known character. Sharon said they were in a hurry and needed to keep climbing the sky tower. With an ice explosion, she destroyed the floor separating the group from the adventurer. The explosion shattered the stone monsters into icy fragments. As she fell, Sharon screamed GSD's name, shocked by what had just happened. The swordsman turned and called out to the young man left behind. From a distance, he asked who the boy was who managed to uncover his secret identity. Shocked by the response, he realized he was right even if it had just been a hunch. Suddenly, GSD turned and caught Jinsong's attention. Facing the swordsman, Jinsong asked who he was and what he wanted. He just replied with his name, saying he was Jinsong. Smiling, he added that they could just call him by his first name. Just then, Sharon approached the pair to join the conversation. Brushing past her, he commented that she was more direct than he'd imagined. Then GSD asked what he wanted. Jinsong asked to be his apprentice. After thinking it over, GSD accepted and told them to get moving. Seeing the deal was done, she watched Jinsong start to walk away. Sharon called out to him. He turned and asked what she wanted. Getting very close, she invited him for tea at the guild. Pushing her away, he warned that he had no intention of talking about the tower. She tried to make a deal anyway, but he flat out refused. She complained, saying there was no need for so much secrecy, but he ignored her and asked if she happened to have a colorless cube. She showed him the cube, asking if that was what he needed. Jinsong just snatched the item, making her yell at him to give it back immediately. Arriving at their destination, GSD announced they had finally reached their goal. Jinsong explained that this was the boss room, while Sharon threatened him in the background. Stepping forward, GSD prepared to advance through the Great Hall. Suddenly, another group of adventurers appeared in their path. While they were introducing themselves, Bon asked which way they should go now. Without answering, GSD simply ran ahead of everyone. Out of nowhere, a winged creature appeared and blocked the swordsman's path. Seeing the apparition, Bon was surprised and asked what that light was. Unable to react, he watched the enemy materialize right in front of him. Then the creature attacked him directly, throwing him backward with great force. Oganzo caught him, and Bon remarked that he thought getting there had been too easy. Introducing himself, the being said his name was Sigard, the Lord of Light. He glared at the group and asked who dared to climb up to that place. As guardian of the site, Sigard ordered all invaders to leave immediately. In front of him, Jinsong stared at the game's boss dialogue box. Without thinking twice, he just pressed the button to skip the cutscene. Just then, the fighter rushed forward to attack the boss without hesitation. Seeing her move, Bon said they needed to join the fight too. Saria Kerman asked if she could help, making Hearts recognize her instantly. He then glared at Jinsong, calling the guy a yellow-haired terrorist. Full of rage, Hearts shouted that he would end him right there, but GSD stopped him, saying that Jinsong was now his new apprentice. He added that he couldn't do anything if Hearts didn't want to talk. Hearts kept staring him down until Oganzo yelled at him to accept the deal. Oganzo warned that they needed to save the fighting for later if they wanted to survive. Several flying monsters appeared, and someone yelled that they were coming in to attack. Wasting no time, GSD charged and cut down the first enemy that appeared. Right after, Charon launched an attack against the horde of monsters. Fighting together, all the adventurers faced the horde of flying monsters. Hearts blocked an enemy attack directly with his sword. Complaining, he said he just wanted to watch, but there were too many monsters to fight. Looking around, he realized the game wasn't registering the others. Hit squarely, one of the monsters was thrown violently into the distance. Meanwhile, the fighter seized the moment to land a direct hit on boss Sigard. Using a powerful blow, she slammed him into the ground with great force. Suddenly, all the guardian monsters in the hall simply stopped moving. Seeing this, Bon asked if they stopped because their leader was defeated. Getting close to the body, Syria asked if the battle was finally over. But on the ground, the fallen boss's hand started moving on its own. Next, a massive pillar of light erupted in the center of the hall. Standing up, Sigard warned that he would burn everyone who tried to stop him. Angry, Bon said Oganzo needed to stop jinxing things. Seeing the situation, Oganzo questioned whether the boss was immortal or not. Explaining the plan, he said they needed to destroy the magic circle in the castle. Yelling for everyone to retreat, he ran and led the way to the exit. He accessed the menu, choosing the floating castle as their next destination. Arriving on site, the group prepared to invade the great floating fortress. There, They found the magic circle being guarded by some very strange monsters. Jin Xiang hid while the monsters were defeated. After completing the objectives, the group finally finished that side quest. Back in the main hall, he faced Sieghart for the final battle. Now, the only remaining goal was to finally defeat the dungeon boss. Seeing the battle begin, he watched his companions facing the great enemy. In a quick movement, Sieghart charged to attack one of his opponents. Taking advantage of the opening, the fighter leaped to land a direct hit on him. Fist ready, she struck the hall's guardian squarely. As a result, the tower powering the boss exploded up in the sky. Celebrating the victory, Syria thanked everyone for their help in finishing the quest. While walking away, he commented that he hoped there wouldn't be problems with the circles. Suddenly, energy began pouring from the fallen boss's body on the floor. That energy ended up unexpectedly enveloping his own body. Scared, he asked why they hadn't managed to get the reward card. At the top of the tower, a large magic circle forms in the sky. Suddenly, a bird flying past gets hit. Watching the scene, Oganzo's group calls it impressive. Bon remarks they can't move forward, wondering what it is. From a distance, Jin Song watches the group analyze the situation near the circle. Climbing the stairs, he searches for the reward card that hasn't appeared. Wearing a worried look, he fears he missed an important mission detail. Down below, Lenny starts yelling for her captain, asking where he is. Hearing the shout, he whips around totally surprised and confused. Seeing the girl, he calls her name. Still not understanding a thing, he asks why she's there, and Lenny replies that she wants a promotion. Complaining, she turns and walks away as Dan is carried off by others. Soon after, she points out that the boss seems to be up there. He quickly stops her from climbing, yelling at her to wait. Irritated, she asks why he stopped her, interrupting the group. Knowing what needs to be done, he realizes he must stop Lenny from interfering. Confused, she asks why he's staring at her like that. Pulling the girl close, he tells her she needs to wait there with him. Then he leads her downstairs, saying the event is about to start. Through the window, a giant flying whale passes calmly through the castle sky. Outside, GSD stops and feels tremors in the air, warning of something coming. Suddenly, a burning airship appears, approaching at high speed. Seeing this, the group is surprised, not understanding what's happening. Lenny shouts, warning that it's an airship and the final event is starting. Explaining the situation, he reveals that an NPC is going to crash nearby. Seeing the falling airship, Lenny yells that they need to run now. Trying to calm her down, he says there's nothing to worry about. But the flaming airship keeps falling straight toward them. Shouting, she says she needs to warn the captain so everyone can escape. Then he looks up, realizing the escape boat will land right there. Seeing the ship falling, Lenny gets confused and doesn't understand the situation. He wonders why the airship is heading straight for them. Then he finally realizes that this is the true corruption of the floating castle. Without hesitating, he throws an item high into the air with great speed. Moving forward, he prepares to prevent anything bad from happening to Lenny. He decides the only option is to destroy the falling airship. He remembers that, in the original story, an NPC was supposed to crash in that exact spot. Now his goal is to save Lenny and ensure the adventurer lands safely. Getting closer and closer, the emergency boat is about to collide. Inside, a female silhouette watches everything through the small ship's window. Desperate, he says there's no way this is possible. Chat messages follow filled with nothing but laughter, and it looks like Jin Xiang is about to explode with rage. Suddenly, the base of the celestial castle tower takes a direct hit. As a result, the entire tower structure begins to crumble completely. Advancing out of control, the airship is about to hit the tower. Sliding along the structure, the ship begins causing major damage. Then he shouts that he won't give up and will complete the mission. Surprised, Lenny sees the ship has been diverted and understands nothing. Checking his inventory, she asks if he threw one of those strange fruits. Scraping against the tower, the airship continues descending while tearing apart piece by piece. Yelling for it to stop, he throws the fruit. Flying at high speed, the fruit hits the side of the airship. Upon impact, the fruit ricochets and hits the base of the airship. Up above, the group hears the sound and wonders what's happening. Oganzo and Bon look down, not understanding what's going on below. Falling along the tower, the airship destroys everything in its path, and the airship keeps falling, causing the two of them to panic. Jin Song grabs the fruit again, preparing to throw it one last time. Hitting the fruit back, he makes it bounce off the debris of the fallen tower. Immediately after, he throws another fruit to maintain the combo rhythm. Watching the scene, Lenny asks what that idiot is doing now. Using his sword, he knocks an item toward the top of the tower. Then he aims at the base of the airship to try and change its trajectory. Suddenly, he realizes he's out of fruits, despairing over the situation. With no more momentum, the airship starts falling toward the ground again. Worried, Lenny warns that the ship is going to crash because it has no more momentum. Suddenly, he throws himself toward the airship. He then places the cube he took from Sharon directly into his mouth. Spitting out the item, he creates a platform from the falling debris. With a kick, he rapidly propels the piece of rock upwards. Then he strikes the rock with his sword, adding even more speed. The projectile flies toward the large magic circle in the sky. With a shout, he releases all the energy contained within his body. Activating a skill, he concentrates a vast amount of dark power. Shrouded in energy, he advances for the final attack against the rock. Using all his power, he unleashes a devastating burst of energy. He strikes the rock with a powerful blow, propelling it upward. The projectile strikes the airship, instantly causing a massive explosion. The force of the impact knocks him backward, unable to react. Down below, Bond screams for everyone to get down and take cover. The airship begins exploding into pieces, falling from the sky. As the debris rains down, the group wonders what just happened. With the event concluded, the reward card finally appears for him. Smiling, he celebrates successfully completing the castle's secret event. But now he is falling from the tower, unsure of what to do. Unable to reach it, he watches his sword falling far beyond his grasp. Suddenly, a hand grabs his wrist, preventing his fatal fall. Surprised by the help, he looks up to see who saved him. Holding his hand tight, Lenny pulls him up with great strength. Then she tells him that now they are finally even for everything that happened. Chapter 11. Holding the broken sword, he comments on the powerful recoil from his explosion. Grumbling, realizes he's almost out of items and has absolutely no gold. Despite the problems, he managed to level up and learn a new skill. But to use these powers, he needs special cube fragments. Looking at his skills, he realizes he's going to need a lot of consumables now. Pausing for a moment, he decides on his next destination. With no other choice, he resolves to go to the Mages Guild. Going back a day in time at the tower entrance, the situation was different. There, he faced Lenny, who was arguing with him about what had happened. She says he only stopped the ship so he wouldn't die not to save her. Then she shouts that he needs to pay her for saving his life. He threatens her, saying he can tell her guild master everything. With a confident smile, she just keeps staring at him without saying a word. Suddenly, the girl flicks him right in the middle of his forehead, yelling. She sets up a date for him to buy her a meal as a reward. Joking about the situation, Bon asks if he's going on a date now. Along with Hearts, he says Jin Song is living a very good life. As they leave, Bon tells him there's no need for such formality between them. Hearts then threatens him, saying he'd like to take his head along. Starting to walk away, Bon calls his name one more time, then he warns that the two of them will meet again. Watching them leave, Jin Song stares at the path they took. He decides it's better to stay out of Bon's sight. Suddenly, GSD appears right in front of him face to face. Startled, he yells while GSD congratulates him on the job. From afar, he thanks GSD for granting his special request. Then the swordsman informs him he has business to settle with Sharon. Quickly, she promises to keep her mouth shut about the tower. After settling the matter, GSD turns and starts to walk away. Approaching, Sharon says she also has no further interest in the matter. She then asks if he was the one who redirected the falling airship. Sharon says he could have blown up the ship or simply escaped, but he brought the ship up as if they needed to meet the person inside. Staring at the tower, he answers nothing and just remains silent, saying it's all right. She tells him he doesn't need to answer. Then she invites him to the Mages Guild if he wants to negotiate something. Arriving at the guild, he's surprised by the size of the Great Hall. He says he didn't expect a place so grand. His expectation was to find just a small, much simpler shop. Now he needs to negotiate with Charon, who wants information in exchange. Unable to talk about the corruption, he doesn't know what he can offer. Without weapons or gold, he needs to use something else in his negotiation. Inside, Sharon greets him, saying he was much faster than expected. Cup in hand, she asks if he's ready to talk. He tries to introduce Iris, but Sharon lets him know she already knows her well. Surprised, Sharon asks how he knows the guild seer, Iris. Understanding nothing, he wonders how she could know his name. He freezes for a moment, staring at the girl strangely. Taking a step forward, He prepares to question the seer, then he approaches her, facing the girl with a very serious look. She calls him by name and introduces herself as Iris, the fortune singer. He asks directly if she saw his future somehow. Shortly after, he adds that she must already know his true role. The seer just observes him intently, saying absolutely nothing for now. She comments that she feels he is the type of person who questions everything. Starting to play her instrument, Iris prepares to answer him. Turning her back, she simply says that everything was already destined to happen. Hearing that, he clenches his fist and repeats the phrase she said. Suddenly, he celebrates upon realizing that was a line from the game. With a smile of relief, he notes he was overthinking the situation. Sharon then asks why he said her name like that. Shortly after, she asks how he knew Iris could see the future. Citing everything he did, she asks who he really is. Then he realizes he said too much, understanding he made a big mistake. After thinking a bit, he takes a step and decides what to do. The two remain standing in the hall, staring at each other in tense silence. Then he announces that the time has come to finally reveal his identity. To explain himself, he prepares to tell Sharon the whole truth. He reveals that he can see the future, saying this is the information he has to sell. A few days later, the Mage Guild is facing a major crisis. Inside, a mage runs desperately down the hallways, flying past framed portraits on the walls. She continues her frantic search, blurring past shelves filled with ancient books. Finally, the girl approaches a grand door at the end of the hall. Throwing the door open, she bursts in screaming desperately for her guild master. Collapsed on the floor, she warns Sharon that a massive problem has just occurred. She yells that the young mage, Lorien, has vanished without a trace. Surprised, Sharon asks if she's certain about the girl's disappearance. To prove it, the mage shows her magic stone. This glow has completely faded. Sharon immediately orders a search of the areas surrounding the guild. Hiding behind the door, Jin Song watched the entire situation unfold. He steps out from his hiding spot, commenting that he already knew this would happen. Jin Song reveals he's seen her future. He tells them she will be found. Standing by the window, Sharon stares at Jin Song as he approaches her. With a highly suspicious look, she asks if he had anything to do with it. Holding the magic stone, she realizes this situation is entirely different. Remembering the airship incident, she wonders if he really can see the future. Smiling, he sees this as the perfect opportunity to showcase his abilities. Noticing her distrust, he decides he needs to do something more. Saying goodbye for now, he advises her to find Kargan soon. Confused, she asks who Kargan is just as his image is shown. Pointing to the poster, he confirms the name, leaving her even more baffled. Then he warns her that she'll need that delivery service very soon. Scene change. A group of adventurers gathers in a city square. Walking down the street, he believes Sharon is almost convinced now. He knows most incidents get resolved by other players anyway. Thinking about the reward, he wonders if he should ask for more gold and potions. With a grin, he concludes that he isn't technically lying to her. Suddenly, someone smacks him hard on the back of the head. Turning around, he realizes he was talking to himself again and got caught. Back in the real world, the streamer watches the screen and recognizes the player. Finding Jin Song in the street, the guy asks if he's the knight of the tower. Trying to flee, he's grabbed by the player who confirms his identity right there. Jin Song starts running, chased by the guy offering to help him level up. Not understanding why he's running, the player stops suddenly with a confused look. Then he yells the name Jin Song, startling the guy significantly. Watching the scene, the streamer can't hold back and starts laughing. Annoyed, Jin Song asks what he's doing, but the guy explains himself. Soon after, he asks how the other player knows his name. Surprised, the player asks if his username is his real name. Checking his info, he realizes his name is now visible to everyone. Smiling, he remembers introducing himself to GSD as Jin Song. Seeing the result, he understands that his actions now have major consequences. Liking his attitude, the player snaps his fingers and reveals a scroll. He opens the scroll, inviting Jin Song to join his guild. Promising various rewards, he tries to convince Jin Song, who refuses instantly. Jin Song then says he knows everything, making the guy lean in closer. He recognizes the voice and understands who it is in that instant. Suddenly, Ophelia appears, screaming that she will go back and get her revenge. Hidden, he recognizes her as the survivor from the burning airship. Then Oganzo tries to hold her back, but the girl breaks free easily. Seeing Bon and Oganzo, he understands that the behemoth storyline has begun. The player doing the quest is the archer named Muse. Unnoticed, he slips away while the guy looks for him. Talking to Bon, Ophelia says the temple above Behemoth is her home. She reveals that all the people living there were like her family, but Lotus controlled them, forcing them to brutally attack each other until death. Screaming in anger, she says she can't just sit around waiting for nothing. Observing everything, Jin Song realizes he needs to stay calm in this situation. The Behemoth, a flying whale, carries a religious organization on its back. Needing to seek help, Ophelia went to the surface because of the attack. There are 12 apostles in total, being the main villains of this new world. He notes that Muse is a very difficult class for beginners. Approaching her, Oganzo questions whether she is an explorer or not. Then he warns them that they are heading to the wrong side of the port. Hidden, he realizes she just skipped the entire conversation part right there. As they walk away, Bon and Oganzo seem uncorrupted for now. With the end of the conversation, the scene closes with a sudden noise. Surprised, he doesn't understand because the scene should have ended right there. Suddenly, Lenny appears running and yelling that she's coming with them too. Following their talk with Ophelia, the group heads to the temple's outer wall. Alongside Bon and Oganzo, the adventurer Jin Song steels himself for the mission ahead. Suddenly, Bon argues with Lenny. He shouts that she shouldn't be there with them. He flat out refuses her request to join, insisting this mission isn't meant for her. Hearts arrives moments later, grabbing hold of Lenny. He apologizes for not being able to stop her sooner. Hearts orders her to calm down, warning that they aren't facing a typical enemy this time. Watching the scene unfold, Jin Song sighs. He asks if this means they're all going together after all. He warns them. If Lenny comes along, the mission will become much more dangerous. While Lenny celebrates excitedly, Hearts keeps a grip on her, wearing a grim expression. Jin Song clenches his fist. He informs everyone that they depart at dawn. Soaring above the city, the giant creature known as Behemoth appears in the night sky. To reach it, the group boards a massive airship at the city's port. Back at the guild, Kargan greets Sharon and asks what she needs right now. Pointing at Jin Song's back, he asks her who that wanderer is over there. She replies that his name is Jin Song, a guest currently staying with them. She asks Kargan if his ship is ready to depart, and he guarantees it is. She then clarifies it's not for her, just as someone desperately bangs on the door. Jin Song opens the door and asks what's happened. Sharon warns of a problem. He begins to explain that something very serious is about to happen on the Behemoth soon. He asks for help boarding the Behemoth, promising to provide details later. Over in the storage room, Jin Sung picks up an item and remarks that it looks good. While Kargan is offering tea, a dagger violently shatters elsewhere in the room. Surprised, the two turn toward the source of the sudden noise. Jin Song sheepishly explains that he barely touched that golden item. Furious, Kargan punches Jin Song squarely in the face for what happened. Kargan screams about the item's cost, but Jin Song dismisses it as trash. Unfazed, Jin Song yells that she will pay for all the broken items. At that moment, the room's door opens slowly, revealing a small crack. Arriving at the scene, a female knight named Lobato asks if Kargan is around. Seeing the scene, Kargan asks Sharon if Jin Song has gone crazy by any chance. Docked at the port, two large ships await passengers for the imminent voyage. Arriving there, Jin Song is surprised by the number of passengers and tells them to get ready immediately. Oganzo comments on the Mages Guild, and Jin Song replies he's just a guest. Oganzo mentions Sharon's expectations, leaving Jin Song visibly tense about the situation. From afar, Jin Song spots Bon and Lenny approaching them on the path to the ship. Upon meeting, they recognize Jin Song, who confirms his participation in the expedition with the guild. Bon asks if he'll be accompanying them. Jin Song requests to borrow a member as a bodyguard. Bon offers Lenny as the escort, and Jin Song accepts the offer immediately. Smirking, Jin Song celebrates the fact that he can now easily monitor Lenny's actions. Lenny asks what he's plotting and then yells at him to board quickly. Just then, Muse approaches as Bon comments that they finally made it. On the ship, large white sails unfurl, preparing for immediate departure. With a massive thrust, the ship begins to lift off, rising from the harbor water. Putting on his goggles, Kargan takes the helm and announces they are leaving now. At high speed, the ship flies toward its final destination, the Behemoth. Approaching the destination, the ship flies toward the gigantic Behemoth, its target. Then, the vessel dives straight into a large dark vortex in the middle of the sky. Because of the turbulence, Muse loses her balance and almost falls, begging them to slow down. Jin Song holds her steady, noticing she's gone still like a lifeless doll. He realizes the travel time functions like a loading screen for players. Before them, an intense light appears at the end of the tunnel, indicating the exit. Exiting the vortex, the ship scrapes past one of Behemoth's giant eyes. Surprised by the scene, Aganzo and Bon look on in amazement at the creature's size. Unable to believe it, Lenny is also in shock at what she's seeing now. Finally, Behemoth's immense body reveals itself, carrying an entire island on its back. Arriving on the island, they find the ground covered in debris and battle marks. Kargan warns from afar that he can't stay put. They need to signal for him to return. Based on the scenery, it's clear a major fight just took place in that destroyed place. Oganzo comments that the air here feels heavy, and Bon agrees it's worse than that. Seeing Muse arrive, Jin Song decides to step away, so she doesn't see him there. Bon starts speak, but is interrupted by a man on the ground begging for help. He recognizes the three-eyed mask, asking if they are survivors of the GBL order. Murmuring that he needs to kill, the man's mask begins to crack right in front of him. Without hesitation, Bon advances and eliminates the figure, shattering his mask into pieces. Looking around, he sees several people controlled by tentacles, all begging to die. Then the tentacles tighten as a voice warns that anyone who disobeys Lotus will die. Then the controlled creatures charge, screaming toward the whole group. With a quick sword strike, Bon cuts down one of the attackers. Bon announces that death is a better fate than being controlled. Stepping away from the fight, Jin Song calls Lenny, telling her to stay close. She warns him to be careful since he's unarmed, but he disagrees. He points to a dagger on the ground, saying he bought a new weapon earlier. Confused, she asks what kind of weird sword he just picked up. As an enemy appears, she yells that it's just a sword hilt. Sensing imminent danger, she spins toward the surprise attack. Acting fast, Jin Song uses the hilt to attack the monster charging at Lenny. Hit squarely by the blow, the monster starts disintegrating right in front of them. With one final move, he completely destroys the creature and it vanishes into thin air. Threat eliminated, he takes a deep breath standing beside Lenny. Turning to her with a smile, he asks if she's okay after the scare. She just stares silently, surprised by what just happened. Moving along the path, the group finds ancient ruins destroyed by time. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Muse uses a special ability to open a portal. Back with the group, Pawn reports the situation is under control. Oganzo turns to the adventurer, saying he must have noticed by now. He explains someone has been watching them since they left the temple's outer wall. From afar, a hooded figure watched their every move. Walking ahead, Oganzo suggests they surprise whoever is following them. Bon points toward a structure in the middle of the jungle ahead. Curious, Lenny asks if the control people could use magic like that too. Holding a crystal, he replies that those were remnants of a battle with her. Recounting the story, he reveals that Isadora tried to eliminate the group before Lotus, but she was caught off guard and fell into their ambush. Then Jin Song says no one died and she became their ally. He concludes that the other group must already be heading to the next dungeon. Realizing their speed, he feels the pressure and his nose suddenly bleeds. Confused by his silence, Lenny asks if he's listening to her. Totally lost in thought, he ignores what she's saying right then. He knows if the story follows its course, Lenny will die there soon. In his mind, he sees a vision of her gravely wounded in battle. So he decides to continue knowing he can't and shouldn't stop what will happen. For him, that fate was determined long ago. Calling her name, he looks at her with pure worry on his face. He tells her to wait, warning she might be attacked again there. She says she just let her guard down, but he retorts that's exactly how you get attacked. Awkwardly, she asks if he happens to have a girlfriend right now. Completely surprised by the question, he freezes, not knowing what to say. He doesn't understand the situation, shocked she'd asked that out of nowhere. Before he can answer, the ground cracks, and a creature attacks them by surprise. Caught off guard, Lenny is hit square on and thrown far with force. Jin Song is also hit by a powerful punch straight from the mysterious creature. Yelling his name, Lenny is scared seeing Roots pinning Jin Song there. Trapped by the dendroid monster, he's surprised there's still an enemy around. He tries using a skill, shouting for the monster to come fight him. Just then, another huge creature silently appears right behind his back. Grabbing Jin Song's face, the creature holds him tight, preventing any movement. Seeing the danger, Lenny jumps toward him and attacks the Roots with her sword. With a powerful blow, she manages to cut the branches and free him from the tree monster. Complaining about the situation, she wonders what's happening in this strange jungle. He starts explaining the creature, but she tells him to shut up. Jin-song comments she was caught off guard, but she claims she was just overconfident. Together, the two monsters scream and advance on the duo for a final attack. Facing each other, the two prepare to fight together against the enemies. Using his weapon, Jin-song moves in and precisely cuts off the wooden monster's arm. Meanwhile, Lenny lands a devastating blow on the other monster with her giant sword. Flying through the air, the creature's arm is severed off after her attack. With determined smiles, the two keep fighting together against all remaining enemies. After the fight, the two breathe heavily amidst the ruins, finally at peace. Suddenly, Lenny loses her balance and falls, making Jin-song very worried. He rushes over and asks if she can get up, but she seems tired. Extending her hand, she says she twisted her ankle and asks for help up. Looking at her, he answers the previous question, saying he already has a girlfriend. He adds that she knows her, and Lenny gets a serious expression. Taking her hand to help her, he says he was going to go out with her on the weekend. Then he reminds her of an old promise, making her completely embarrassed. Even without knowing where to go, she says she doesn't care about other people's opinions. Suddenly, she lands a strong kick on Jin-song's stomach without warning. He asks why she hit him, and she screams that he deserved it. Running together through the area, they move forward, now closer than before. Shifting scenes to a grand hall, the duo explored the interior of an ancient temple. Racing down a corridor, they pushed forward, blurring past ancient wall paintings. They battled monsters along the way. Lenny struck one down while Jin-song handled others in the background. She asked if he was sure about the route, and he confirmed he was. According to him, their destination was the forbidden shrine holding the GBL Order's weapon. Suddenly, she told him to look ahead, drawing his attention to something. In the center of the hall, he noticed traces of a Muse player's ability. Lenny then pointed to something glittering nearby, wondering what it could be. Picking it up, he got excited, realizing it was a rare item left behind. Confused, Lenny asked about the chains. He told her it was sealed. He explained that high-rarity items often came magically sealed just like this. He said it just needed a click, but Lenny warned him only mages could do that. Determined, he said he'd ask Sharon for help and grabbed the item from the floor. Suddenly, various other pieces of equipment started appearing all over the hall. Totally confused, he wondered why so much gear was scattered around. He realized the Muse player had abandoned the items because she didn't need them. Laughing hard, he decided he would take very good care of all those abandoned items. Changing scenes, the adventurer group defeated the shrine's boss, Ulcer. Lying on the ground, Ulcer asked why Isadora had abandoned the chance for everyone to survive. Bond said she could resist by transforming, but she refused to do it. She replied that he always sought the most guaranteed and safe methods above all else. Arriving at the spot, Jin-song realized they had reached the scene of Ulcer's defeat. He asked Lenny to wait as they seemed to be discussing something very important. With his final words, Ulcer called him a fool before finally falling defeated. Saying they needed to move, Isadora and the others quickly left the area. He realized nothing was corrupted yet, and one final event still needed to happen. Just then, Lenny tripped and fell right in front of the other group. Annoyed by the fall, she asked if he was trying to be funny with her. Lying near her, an ancient book caught their attention, looking important for the mission. Startled, he recognized the object as the legendary Book of Genesis, a key item, an essential item. The Book of Genesis prophesied the fate of everyone in Arad. Seeing the book, he yelled angrily while Lenny watched him, understanding nothing. Trying to hold him back, she asked what he was doing, totally surprised by his reaction. Far from there, Bond spoke to Isadora about the item's importance to the mission. Stopping suddenly, he turned around, thinking he'd just heard a voice nearby. His companions continued down the corridor, leaving the battle site behind without him. While Oganzo called him, he kept looking back, suspicious that someone was there. Hidden, Jin-song covered Lenny's mouth so the group wouldn't find them. He was relieved to notice Bond hadn't found the book and the event had failed. Worried, Lenny thought about what to do since the story could be corrupted now. In that close proximity, he stared fixedly at her, making the mood between them tense. Getting closer, he left her speechless, totally surprised by his attitude. Asking her to be quiet, he whispered for her not to move for now. Then he leaned into her face as if he were about to kiss her right then. But instead, he grabbed the book and started writing, trying to fix the story. Asking her to stop talking, he warned her he needed to concentrate on writing. Celebrating, he showed the first chapter of the Book of Genesis finally completed right there. He bragged about his memory while Lenny prepared to attack Bond from behind. Sensing something strange, Bon suddenly turned in their direction, understanding nothing. Just then he stopped and realized there was a book lying on the floor right there. From afar, Jin Song celebrated that the book had been successfully delivered to the group. He picked up the page and started reading what was written about the gods. With a confused expression, he didn't seem to recognize the story he was reading now. After reading, he turned and started walking, following his path normally. Suddenly, he yelled, declaring he'd never heard a story like that before. Seeing it was unfinished, he decided to take the mysterious book with him from there. Watching the scene, Lenny noticed Pon's strange expression and yells in the distance. She commented that he'd gotten irritated before, but nothing like what she just saw. Having never seen him so furious, she asked exactly what Jin Song had shown him. Not understanding the reaction, Jin Song wondered if Bon always got angry at that part. He said he wasn't sure about his expression, but the lines were the same. Realizing the letter hadn't appeared, Lenny understood the corruption wasn't over yet. At that, she felt she'd be in danger if she kept following the adventurer group. Turning to Lenny, Jin Song started saying they needed to do something soon. Suddenly, the ground started shaking and a new figure appeared in the hall. Understanding nothing, Oganzo asked Isadora about the tremor that suddenly started. Roaring loudly, a monster's mouth revealed itself to be the cause of the shaking. While everything rocked, someone screamed that the behemoth was feeling great pain right then. Scared by the scene, Jin Song realized it was the villain Lotus Mind Control. He understood that the mind control was about to hit the behemoth full on now. Deep within the creature, a massive eye opened, unleashing a bizarre mental pressure. A vision struck Jin Song, showing a third eye forming on his own forehead. He screamed a warning. The creature's brainwashing was already reaching them. Just as quickly, the giant eyelid began to close, cutting off the psychic assault. Collapsed on the ground, he noted that it had stopped and they needed a plan immediately. Looking back, Jin Song asked if Lenny felt it too and suggested they retreat. Despite Lenny's confusion, he insisted he had realized something crucial and needed to report it immediately. He grabbed his communicator, concentrating on sending the message to the guild. Elsewhere, Sharon noticed the device signaling on her desk. Seeing the confirmation, Jin Song celebrated that she had received the signal for reinforcements. The scene shifted to the forest where a voice asked what he had discovered. He replied simply he had found the final destination of the creature known as Lotus. Outside, Lenny remained on guard while they talked within. Eavesdropping, she was startled to hear the term Middle Ocean. Inside, Sharon explained that Lotus was originally aquatic and currently weakened. Analyzing the book, he realized Lotus was steering the creature toward the Middle Ocean. He clutched his head, claiming he had seen the plan succeed in his mind's eye. He revealed that the monster would regain its power and destroy the entire world of Arad. At this terrible news, a glass suddenly fell from the table and shattered. Sharon asked if this was the definitive future, and he confirmed it could not be changed. Grabbing him, she yelled that there had to be a way to defeat the monster. Unfazed, he slowly approached her while she remained confused. Holding out his hand, Jin Song simply said he needed 100,000 gold coins. The door suddenly flew open, interrupting their conversation. Lenny burst in, urging him to hurry back. He replied that they needed to make a stop somewhere else first. Soon, they were at the market with Lenny holding an ice cream in each hand. Jin Song explained they were at the famous Hendenmeyer market known for its interesting wares. She yelled, asking if they really had time for this, but he responded calmly. Revealing his true plan, he said he had come to procure an item to resist Lotus power. When she asked about the ice cream, he simply replied that it tasted good. Arriving at a stall, they were warmly welcomed by the friendly local vendor. Introducing her wares, young Kana claimed she sold everything an adventurer might need. He handed her a list and asked her to retrieve the items written on it. Examining the paper carefully, she seemed to verify every request he had made. She warned them it would take time and asked them to return only after dark. While Lenny complained, he simply stated there was nothing to do but wait. Smiling, he confirmed they would have to stick around until nightfall. Pulling Lenny along, he said he would fulfill his promise to buy her food. Looking back at the list, Kana noticed a message asking her to delay them as long as possible. Wandering through the market, they stopped to watch a lively fish vendor. He pointed to the side, trying to show her something, but Lenny remained uninterested. The scene shifted to see a player named Guessing being defeated and falling to the ground. At a nearby game stall, another player celebrated excitedly, holding up a prize. Close by, water balloons burst on the targets of a fun fair game. A dart hit the bull's eye, popping a water balloon. Lenny cheered, lifting the prize she had won, while other players applauded her victory. Smiling, she tightly hugged the new plush toy she had won. He amused himself by putting a weird creature near her face. As the sun set, they remained seated on a bench, observing the market. Tasting the food, she remarked that it was delicious and that her brother would love it. The image briefly showed her family who lived a life of poverty. Turning to him, Lenny thanked him for making time for her. However, she said she knew a weapon master didn't really need an assistant. Mentioning their return, she said she would be grateful just to survive the mission. Clutching the plush toy, she admitted she got anxious whenever she thought about her family. Rising from the bench, she declared that today had been a fun, worry-free day. Smiling, she promised never to forget it and suggested their next meeting be in the Empire. Hearing the proposal, he stared at her with wide eyes, completely speechless. Beneath the bench, he clenched his fist tightly while repeating the word meeting. Still sitting, he asked if Lenny would stay behind if they had to go back. Playfully touching his face with a leaf, she replied that she only followed orders. With a smile, she declared that the Iron Wolf Knights never ran from a fight. Hearing her answer, he just stared at her in silence, processing her words. Shifting to that night, the scene revealed a dungeon atop the massive creature. Calling out for Isadora, he mentioned hearing about a weapon located there that could defeat Lotus. Looking around, he complained that she hadn't mentioned the existence of these cocoons. Approaching them, he wondered aloud what exactly these strange things were. But at that instant, one of the cocoons began to crack, revealing a creature inside. Seeing the creature, Aganzo was shocked and questioned if its form was known. With a quick movement, the creature managed to burst open the cocoon and free itself completely. The monster then advanced at high speed, ready to attack Aganzo's group. At Magatha Port, Roboto notes the advance group is taking a while. Scanning the sky, Dan announces the Magatha's return. Muse walks down the ramp alone, confusing everyone present. Hartz von Kruger steps up, asking why she's back by herself. Wordlessly, she hands him the Knight Captain's emblem. Getting the message, he orders the Iron Wolf Knights to assemble immediately. Back in the hall, we see what happened to Jin Seong earlier. With Sharon's help, all his sealed items are finally unlocked. He opens his info screen. His fame has increased tenfold. Pumped, he gets ready to test his new power. But suddenly, he realizes his gear is gone. He has no idea why. Staring at his hands, he wonders if it just turned invisible. On their way out, they hear a familiar voice thanking the adventurer. Nearby, the seer Iris wonders if these few minutes will decide Arad's future. Peeking through the door, he realizes she's giving the bracelet to Muse. He knows it's not out of kindness. Iris is being controlled. Bracelet on wrist, Muse preps for the mission ahead. Remembering the original story, he knows the item won't work right in the end. Deciding to stop dwelling on it, he focuses on guiding the story back on track. Back at the port, Hartz tells Muse preparations are complete. On board, Lobato yells for him to hurry up so they can leave. Walking to the ship, he realizes it's finally starting. The aircraft takes off, beginning the final journey toward the monster Lotus. Back at base, they prep the operation. It has 2 destinations. The main group is split into 2 attack teams. Muse's group went to rescue survivors. He and the Knights went after Lotus. On the battlefield, a monster's head is blown clean off. Following orders, the Knights keep firing cannons to clear a path. A creature charges, screaming for everyone to die in Lotus's name. Seeing this, he yells for everyone to move. With a quick move, he dashes across the field, taking out multiple monsters at once. Everyone is impressed. He's too fast to keep up with, but a tentacle sneaks up and attacks him from behind. The monster grabs Knight Dan, who starts screaming for help. Jin Song launches an attack, destroying the monster and freeing Dan instantly. Seeing his power, Fiona wonders if he's the guy Lenny mentioned. He warns that Lotus will use mind control, making the Knight nervous. Telling him to hang on, he reveals his countermeasure and activates his third eye. Staring down the dark energy, he prepares his defense. Suddenly, he acts strange. Dan asks what's wrong. His eyes begin to glow. The mental attack has already hit him. A huge creature appears before him, demanding he become its vassal. He realizes Apostle Lotus mind control has begun. Trying to stay calm, he remembers the monster is weakened. Facing the monster, he's questioned. How does he know about the star called Solaris? Scared, he realizes the giant monster is reading his thoughts. Fighting a headache, he hears the monster find the situation interesting. Lotus says he reads the world like a script and asks where he's from. Trying to focus, he decides he needs to clear his mind. But the creature demands an answer, increasing the mental pressure. It threatens to burst his head if he doesn't answer soon. Reading his mind, Lotus describes his world as a gray, contaminated city. Challenging the monster, he unleashes a flood of information all at once. Bombarded with data, the creature can't process it all and starts to retreat. Screaming, the monster asks what those thoughts are and begs him to stop. Even exhausted, he withstands the backlash of his own powerful mental counterattack. Seeing the creature retreat, he knows the tide has turned. This is his chance. Confirming he's from another world, he says that's why he knows so much. Sword in hand, he claims he can get Lotus out of there too. Pressing the blade to its neck, he warns Lotus not to read his mind again. The giant monster questions if he really has the nerve to make that bet. Without hesitation, he replies he has nothing to lose. He's going to die anyway. With a sinister smile, the creature yields. It asks what he really wants. He asks directly if Lotus is the true source of the contamination. Thoughtful, the monster says some apostles spread plagues like filthy Delisier. Jin Song explains it's not biological, but Lotus says that's irrelevant. Seeing his insistence, the creature starts laughing, leaving him confused. Then the monster asks if he doesn't already know the answer to his own question. The scene reveals only a special apostle could deceive Namir's gaze. Reaching a conclusion, he realizes his hunch was right all along. Only one person is capable of such a feat, the powerful and mysterious Hildur. Annoyed, he wonders why the most annoying target is the source of the corruption. Seeing his reaction, Lotus claims he's escaping reality even without reading his mind. Trying to remember, he lists the apostles who might possess that ability. He bluntly asks if their skill is greater than Lotus. Enraged, the creature shouts, telling him not to compare it to those fools. Seeing he struck a nerve, he listens as Lotus belittles the other apostles' abilities. The monster then declares itself the one true ruler of all the oceans. Threateningly, it says that in the ocean, it can extract even his most repressed memories. Then he realizes Hildur can't read minds since she relies on strategy. If she had that ability, she wouldn't worry about the seer Iris's memories. Before he can ask another question, Lotus' tongue suddenly cuts him off. Demanding an answer, the monster asks exactly what that box he saw was. Shouting loudly, the creature demands an explanation for being trapped inside a small box. Laughing, he says he has no choice and will tell it what he saw. Revealing the future, he warns that Lotus will soon be defeated by the other adventurers. Filled with rage, the creature threatens to crush him, but he just defies the monster. Furious, the monster opens its mouth, showing all its pointy teeth. But retreating, Lotus says it doesn't seem like the right time to play with him. Creating a whirlpool, it warns the human to leave or face true destruction. As the water pushes him away, he's confused about why the monster is letting him go. While he wonders this, the scene shifts to Moose's group advancing through the area. Her bracelet starts flashing, but then suddenly goes dark. Snapping out of the trance, Jin Song wakes up scared, finally free from the apostle's mind control. Standing up, Fiona sees he's awake as he asks where he is. Running up to them, Night Dan arrives with urgent news for everyone. He warns them that the adventurer has disappeared, and Lenny is already looking for her. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Fiona says they need to hurry and starts running. Running right behind her, he understands that's why Lotus let him go. With Muse's blocker failing, he deduces that her group has been controlled. Thinking about this, he fears Lenny might get hurt finding them alone. Urgently, he says he needs to hurry before the worst actually happens. Stopping suddenly, he questions what he would do once he reached them. Questioning himself, he remembers he's there to stop the corruption, not cause it. At that moment, a rift opens in the air, cracking space in the forest. With wide eyes, he turns toward the anomaly that just appeared. Two people begin stepping out of the rift, leaving him completely stunned. To his surprise, it was Muse and Iris walking out of the rift calmly and together. Seeing the scene, he becomes confused about Lotus's supposed mind control over her. Right behind them, Saran also emerges asking if they finally reached the great creature Behemoth. Turning in surprise, he stares at the unknown man who just came out of the rift. Analyzing his clothes and sword, he begins to piece together what he's seeing. Then he finally recognizes him as Siren, one of the 4 traveling weapon masters. He realizes Siren brought them to an event happening in another time. He observes Siren's group, realizing they have indeed traveled to the past. Suddenly, Lenny's voice shouts out ordering the adventurer to stop right where he is. Hearing the voice, he turns and hears Saran say he finally found him. Saran then warns him not to touch anything so as not to complicate the situation. Drawing his sword, he says not to touch anything except Lenny herself. Confused by the order, he wonders about the change in the observation mission. Meanwhile, Muse and Iris look toward the stairs where the corruption is visible. On the roof, he sees corrupted figures approaching Lenny, who is on the ground. He remains still, knowing the Time Lords might intervene if he acts. A large explosion occurs on the staircase, destroying part of the surrounding structure. Lenny is thrown back as she dodges the attacks. Seeing the distraction, Muse yells for the adventurer to keep total focus on the battle. Pointing to an entrance, Saren warns the group that she is right there. With his sword in hand, Saren tells everyone it's time to act. Then he advances and blocks the enemy's attack with his shining sword. Fallen on the ground, Siren seems confused by the attack and asks what that is. The adventurer attacks him, making Siren wonder if he might be an apostle. Still disguised, he realizes he hasn't been caught and can't let them act. But his disguise starts to fail, worrying him that his identity will be revealed. Sirhan then manages to dodge another quick attack launched against him. Afraid of being discovered, he worries about the intervention of the Time Lords. Continuing the battle, the two-trade sword blows non-stop across the courtyard. Confused, he wonders why nothing is happening as he sees Muse preparing behind him. Using a quick movement, he tries to get past Sirhan to stop her attack. Enraged, Sirhan shouts at him for daring to look away during the fight. Struck from behind, he feels the impact of the blow as Sirhan continues the combat. Concentrating energy in his hand, he prepares to use one of his dark abilities. Then he unleashes a massive dark energy attack to hit everyone at once. Surprised by the attack, Sirhan and Muse are caught off guard by the ability. With all his strength, he yells while unleashing the maximum power of his technique. But suddenly, he gets hit squarely by a punch from the seer Iris. Fallen on the ground, he can't understand the reason for the sudden unexpected attack. Still on the ground, he hears Iris shout the names of Sirhan and the adventurer. Seizing the chance, the corrupted enemies advance to attack the unprotected Lenny. But instead of attacking, Iris screams desperately for them to save Lenny. Sarin and Muse are confused by the request. They look down at the girl fallen on the ground. Suddenly, a red dagger streaks toward the monster at high speed. It hits the mark. The dagger defeats the enemy and saves the knight Lenny's life, but Sira and Muse start arguing. She yells at him to stop right now. Suddenly, Fiona and Dan arrive, surprising Lenny on the ground. Confused by the scene, he wonders why they attacked Iris' group. Running ahead, Fiona yells that she found them. She calls them a bunch of fanatics. Watching the fight start, he doesn't understand the reason for their clash. Standing in the middle of the chaos, he doesn't know what to do. Holding on to Muse, the knight Dan yells at him, asking what he's doing. He tells him to hurry up and help Lenny. She's in danger. Still unresponsive, he just hesitates, unable to decide on a course of action. Seizing the distraction, one of the monsters attacks Lenny from behind. Lenny falls, defeated. Muse seems to have been hit too. But looking at the scene, Muse faces it all with a cold, determined glare. Finally making up his mind, he turns and prepares to join the fray. Rushing to help, he fires off an attack while screaming Lenny's name. Meanwhile, Muse ignores the attack and readies her own powerful technique. Then she fires a massive blast of energy toward the fallen knight. Looking up, Lenny sees the attack coming. She can't move or react. But at the last second, he throws himself in front to protect her from the blow. As soon as the dust settles, the surrounding area goes completely silent. Even with the help, Lenny ends up on the ground, gravely injured and bloody. Nearby, Iris continues to stare down again, so while the others remain down. Seeing her friend on the ground, Fiona falls into despair beside Dan. Standing there, he just watches the tragic scene, unable to do anything else. Fists clenched, he remembers that this death is part of the story. At that moment, the bracelet on Muse's wrist suddenly shines again. Glowing brightly, her left eye shows the sign of strange, powerful corruption. But right after, her right eye returns to normal, breaking the control. Seeing Iris down, Oganzo slowly begins approaching his opponent on the ground. Questioning the right path, he thinks about what to do regarding Lenny. Fallen, Sirhan, and Muse are enveloped by a strange dark energy. Looking at the scene, he notices the enemies getting up suspiciously. Now corrupted, the Sirhan and Muse from the future turn against him and the others. Shocked, he doesn't understand how they became fanatics since they were from the future. Clenching his hands, he remembers that everything happened exactly like in the original story. But just then, he realizes his mind is being read again. Sensing the monster's presence, he knows he can't let this continue. He hears Lotus's voice saying it was still inside his head. Then he understands that Lotus tricked him, making the fanatics look like the group. Realizing he was deceived, he understands they played him from the start. Snapping out of the trance, he finds himself atop a building far from the battle. Filled with rage, he punches the ground, screaming the Apostle Lotus name. Looking at the creature, he realizes Lotus was the corruption the entire time. With a furious look, he promises to end the Apostle Lotus. The scene shifts to the center of the dungeon where the main battle is raging. Running along the tentacles, Bon tries to cut the creature but can't deal any damage. Seeing the struggle, it curses the humans for endlessly challenging it. Using its tentacles, the creature grabs the two of them, saying they aren't enough. But Bon tells him not to be too optimistic. He's facing two masters. Angry, the creature tells him to shut up and attacks him with a tentacle. But at that moment, Muse attacks from above, hitting the creature and freeing Bon. Calling for the adventurer, she complains that he's late for the big battle. Seeing him arrive, the monster wonders how he escaped the mental trap. Not understanding the failure, the creature wonders if it will die to the adventurer. Laughing at the situation, she tells him not to make her laugh in such a pathetic way. Seeing her determination, Pan wonders why she got so excited all of a sudden. She then fires several energy arrows which streak toward their target. The arrows strike the creature's tentacles, creating a series of small explosions. Reaching out her hand, she screams that she'll end everyone right there and then. But a tentacle grabs her, leaving her no chance to react or defend herself. Suddenly, purple smoke envelopes the two of them. They disappear without a trace. Using a skill, Muse manages to reappear elsewhere, free from the monster's tentacle. Bon is impressed by the teleport. He praises player Muse's incredible skill. The creature turns against her. She just faces the monster with determination. Using a powerful kick, she lands a fatal blow, making the creature scream. Seeing the monster defeated, she realizes it's still not the end of the battle. From afar, Bon sighs in relief, saying the long fight is finally over. Complaining, Bon says they would have been fine even without the adventurer's help. Thanking them for the good work, he points to an energy sphere that appeared. But suddenly, he hears Lotus's voice asking not to make him laugh. With an intense glow, the creature's eye begins releasing enormous energy. The ground starts shaking and the entire structure of the place begins to fall apart. Then the whale creature starts moving, taking the dungeon to its destination. Seeing the place crumble, everyone tries to hold on so they don't fall into the abyss. Irritated, Aganzo yells at Lotus, asking what he's doing right now. His eye begins to shine, showing that the corruption is hitting him. At the same time, Aganzo's eye also glows, showing the same dark corruption. Next, player Muse's eye also shows the same sign of corruption. Suddenly, Aganzo's sword falls to the ground, indicating he's been controlled. With an empty look, Muse just starts laughing strangely. Possessed, she keeps laughing loudly, leaving everyone confused about what's happening. The creature laughs at destiny, saying that the Great Lotus will win in the end. Reflected in the monster's eye, he prepares for the confrontation to come. Dodging the debris, Jinsong manages to get close to the eye of the gigantic sea creature. Jinsong says this is the end of the line for the Apostle. Amidst the wreckage, Bon Wallachstead appears to confront the group of adventurers. Staring down the adventurer, Bon demands to know why he's laughing in such a serious situation. Grinning, he replies that it's because Bon is about to die right there. Surprised, Lotus asks how he can move while under mind control. Unfazed, the creature prepares to dominate him with its psychic powers, but a shield of energy protects him, leaving the monster confused about how he defended himself. The attack is reflected, knocking the other adventurers far away. Challenging the beast, he tells Lotus to read his mind and find the secret to his defense. Using its ability, Lotus sees memories of him buying an item at the market. Resistance potions are visible on the ground, revealing his strategy. Then he remembers asking for the item at Kanna's shop. He explains that he prepared the item specifically to block the monster skills. Furious, the creature's tentacles thrash about, ready to strike. Shouting, Lotus curses him for using such a cheap trick against an apostle. Laughing, he says he has plenty of hands to crush him even without mind control. Tired of the noise, he yells that it's time to end this battle once and for all. The scene shifts to a tall tower showing the grand structure beneath the moon. Struck down, one of Lotus' creatures is destroyed in a single hit. Deflecting a tentacle with his sword, he asks how it plans to crush him now. Without answering, the creature launches a tentacle attack at the adventurer. Then, the tips of the tentacles begin to glow, ready to fire energy blasts. He manages to dodge the attacks, weaving through all the monster's shots. But one tentacle hits him from behind, throwing him far with great force. Seeing this, the monster says it can easily read all his movements. The creature asks how he intends to fight someone who knows his every move. With a confident smile, he asks if the monster really can read all his movements. Using a skill, he creates a massive wave of energy to attack the creature. He takes a hit but readies himself for the next. Next, he uses another skill, creating a cross of dark energy in front of him. The monster wonders if he's setting up an ambush with the attack. He realizes he needs an attack the monster can't react to in time. Laughing, the creature says he needs to consider the attack's final area. Reading his mind, Lotus predicts the attack and turns to defend against the blow. Smiling, the creature turns to attack and declares that it's the end. But suddenly, the creature is surprised, unable to understand what's happening. In a swift movement, he attacks the creature from the front, catching it off guard. Unable to react, the monster wonders how he attacked from the front and not from behind. Concentrating, he prepares for the next attack, aiming for the monster's right side. Preparing for the strike, the creature turns toward the side he thought of. But again, the attack comes from the opposite side, hitting the creature squarely. Confused, the monster wonders how he's attacking from a different direction. Then he reveals that he's only using game commands to attack. Not understanding the symbols, the creature can't predict his next attacks. Yelling, he asks what's wrong since the monster is supposed to read everything. Landing several hits, he manages to deal massive damage to the giant monster. Seeing the glow, the creature turns in the direction of the attack to defend itself. Charging forward, he attacks the creature's eye with his sword for more damage, but a tentacle hits him, throwing him against a stone pillar. He coughs up blood, feeling the pain of the impact. As he's hit, he hears the creature say it understands the game commands now. The monster explains that he used directional differences to trick it. Laughing, the creature states it memorized all the commands while reading his memories. With a quick strike, a tentacle hits him full on, knocking him to the ground. Hit again, he can't defend against the monster's rapid attack. The tentacles keep beating him relentlessly, causing massive continuous damage. Lying on the ground, he lacks the strength to react to the attacks. Seeing him down, the creature begins to laugh at its victory. Unable to stand, he realizes the commands aren't working anymore. With one last attack, a tentacle throws him far away, ending the confrontation. Down, he stares at the monster who questions his previous confidence. Angrily, the creature asks if his rage is because of her. The monster reminds him that he was the one who left her to die. Suddenly, several ice spikes are launched at high speed in his direction. Charging forward, he shouts the monster's name, ready for the final decisive attack. The monster's eye begins to glow, releasing powerful dark energy, and he is completely struck by the monster's tentacle, which pierces his chest. Laughing, the creature calls him a fool for fighting to the bitter end. With a determined look, he prepares to continue combating the monster. Using his speed, he slips past the tentacle and gets close to the main body. As he dodges, he manages to drive his sword into the giant powerful creature's tentacle. Confused, the monster wonders about the image it just saw. With all his strength, he screams that he's going to end the monster right there. Seeing the attack, the creature asks what trick he used this time. With a quick blow, he hits the creature's tentacles, dealing massive damage. The monster wonders how he's ignoring its attacks and surviving. Trying to understand, the creature struggles to figure out what's happening. It starts searching his memories, trying to find a secret or a plan. Rummaging through everything, it insists there must be a secret hidden somewhere. Suddenly, creature stops as it sees a specific memory shining among the others. Seeing the memory, it wonders what it is and if this was the secret. Analyzing the skill screen, it tries to understand what it's seeing in the memory. Unable to comprehend, it sees skill prerequisites like super armor. With a lost look, the creature says it can't understand anything it's seeing. But right then, he advances, severing several of the creature's tentacles at once. Surprised, it screams that it's impossible, that this couldn't really be happening. Not understanding the invincibility, it wonders what kind of nonsense this is. Leaping up, he readies his sword for the final blow against the creature. Seeing the attack, the creature begs him to wait, but it's already too late. Remembering Lenny, he asks for forgiveness and says this is his only penance. Vowing revenge, He states he will destroy the apostles and the contamination. As dark energy envelopes him, he promises to purify them all. Concentrating all power into his hand, he prepares his final attack against the monster. Then, an immense column of dark energy emerges heading straight for the great apostle. With all his strength, he pushes the attack forward, releasing the accumulated power. Approaching the eye rapidly, the energy column is about to hit its target. Going through the monster's body, the strike hits home, causing massive damage. The attack slices through everything ahead, creating a trail of pure total destruction. Chunks of rock are thrown high into the air by the force of the impact. Continuing forward, the energy carves up the earth, opening a path through the landscape. After the attack, only a few leaves float slowly through the air in complete silence. In its place, a huge abyss has been created, splitting the landscape in two. Turning his back on the destruction, he says goodbye to Lenny, remembering her sacrifice. Rain poured down. The ancient temple tottered on the brink of total collapse. Amidst the storm, the entire structure kept crumbling to pieces. On the ground, a severed tentacle bled heavily, marking the end of the battle. Wounded, the giant monster Lotus struggled to rise from the rubble. He then realized he was just a puppet in a predestined plot. Walking along the edge, a figure slowly approached the fallen monster. He asked if the monster was okay with its predetermined fate. Lotus replied, saying that he too was merely a puppet of the contamination. Laughing loudly, Bloodrain Slayer raised his sword for the final blow. With one final movement, he brutally attacked the apostle without hesitation. From afar, a pair of eyes watched the entire situation unfold intently. Isadora remarked to Kargan that she thought she spotted something near Lotus. Suddenly, the archer Muse appeared amidst the scene of destruction. Surprised, Kargan asked if Muse had fought the apostle Lotus alone. Looking toward the horizon, Isadora asked the adventurer directly about the battle. Guessing celebrated, saying it was incredible, while his companion agreed it was impressive. Throughout the forest, heavy rain continued to fall, giving no quarter to anyone. At the outpost, a knight yelled to hurry with the wounded. Lobato commented that the horrible atmosphere was dissipating, and Bon agreed. Noting the adventurer arrived just in time, she watched two figures moving away. Nearby, Fiona observed the situation with a serious expression. Hearts and Bon also watched the group of knights gathering there. Carrying a body in his arms, Knight Dan joined the others. Everyone then gathered under the rain, paying their respects to the fallen. Looking up, Muse silently followed all the movement. Hidden behind a tree, Jin Song watched the solemn moment from afar. The rain kept falling ceaselessly over the entire night encampment. In the makeshift camp, Lenny's body was placed alongside the other soldiers. Displaying her promotion, the knight's medal was placed upon her body. Bon then suggested the knight celebrate the victory instead of mourning. Lobato asked if he felt no pity for the men who died in battle. Bon said that sympathy is a disgrace for a knight who must maintain their honor. This was a line Jinsong remembered reading countless times in the game. Irritated by the mood, Ban asked Gonzo where he was going now. He replied that he wanted to check Lotus' body to guarantee it was really over. Jinsong then understood that Pawn's true goal was to absorb its power. Clenching his fist, he decided he would no longer intervene in the original story, even if this decision might lead to a completely different outcome in the future. And so the chapter of history known as Behemoth finally came to an end. Changing scenes, a mysterious figure tried on a newly acquired mask in front of her. Charon commented to Jinsong that it was incredible he could see through that item. He never imagined that could be treated like normal game equipment. In the past, similar items existed, but they could no longer be obtained by anyone. Figuring out how it works, he could take unavailable items by ripping them from monster bodies. Curious, Charon asked if Jinsong brought anything else for her to appraise. Suddenly, a man was startled by a scream coming from outside the hall. Complaining of pain, Jinsong warned Charon to be careful with his still sore muscles. He then realized the side effects of the super armor still persisted in his body. Fortunately, news spread that it was the adventurer who defeated the fearsome Lotus. Charon then said there was something else she needed to worry about now. Commenting on his change, she said his words seemed to carry more weight now. In reaction to the comment, he showed her an item that stored away. His skills impressed her, and she decided to formally recruit him into the Mages Guild. Receiving the contract in hand, he remained silent for a brief moment. Changing scenes to the guild headquarters, the day seemed much calmer. After signing the contract, he asked for the payment in advance, and she handed it over. Watching him turn to leave, Sharon asked where he was going now. He advised that he needed to check something and would return in just a few days. Opening the door to leave, he told her not to worry about the money. With a smile, Jin Song affirmed that he now had a good reason to give it his all. Walking down the trail, he finally spots a signpost with the directions he needed. Wincing in pain, he grumbles that the rain completely washed out the road to Elvengard. He confirms he still needs to head there to find a blacksmith named Linus. Unsure of his next move, he wonders aloud if he should call for help. Just then, Sharon approaches and offers him a mysterious potion she brewed up. Confused, he asks what it is. She just questions if he really doesn't know. Before he can even attempt to drink it, she decides to force the potion down his throat. Suddenly, a brilliant light completely engulfs his body without warning. In an instant, he teleports away, vanishing right before her eyes. Landing hard on the ground, he groans in pain and looks around in confusion. Astonished, he looks up and realizes he's finally made it to the Elvengard forest. He realizes Sharon must have given him a teleportation potion and starts running. Thinking about the level restriction, he spots a blacksmith's forge in the distance. Approaching, he yells out for Linus the blacksmith, who is already hard at work. Linus mentions things have been dull ever since Syria left recently. Giving him a hug, Linus asks about the friend he said he was going to save. Jin Song remains silent for a moment, just watching the blacksmith's expression. He remembers how Lenny looked before everything happened to her. With a sad look, he replies that there's no need to worry anymore. Changing the subject, Linus asks the real reason for his visit. He answers that he needs help crafting a new sword for battle. Giving him a suspicious look, Linus asks what happened to the sword he already made him. Linus then asks what kind of sword he wants and if he has the materials. He asks just what Jinxiong brought that got him so hyped up. He opens his inventory and a massive item flies out, hitting the blacksmith full force. Startled, Linus demands to know what the hell that giant thing in front of him is. Smiling, he explains it's a tentacle cut straight from Lotus. Irritated, the blacksmith shouts, asking how he's supposed to make a sword out of that. Pretending to understand, Jin Song says it probably would be too much work for him. He turns away, commenting that only the best blacksmith could pull off such a feat. Challenge accepted. Linus tells him to wait right there. Hitting hard with his hammer, he yells that he never said he couldn't do it. Seeing the blacksmith's reaction, Jin Song smiles, satisfied with how his plan worked out. Excited, he asks if it'll be a piece of cake. Linus demands a week and more materials. With the weapon issue settled, he decides to hit the market for some new potions. In despair, he remembers he used the teleportation potion just to get here. Not knowing how to get back, he suddenly hears someone shouting his name. It was Sharon, saying he should have listened to what she had to say. Handing him another potion, she advises him to just think of the destination before drinking it. As he gets ready, he asks why his potion isn't yellow. Surprised by the question, she stops for a second and glares at him irritably. She screams at him not to compare her organic potion with the knockoffs from the market. Scared by her reaction, he quickly thanks her and uses the potion to escape. Back at the guild, the hallway seems completely empty and very quiet. He opens a door to one of the rooms and follows Sharon inside. Surprised, he enters the room and asks if these are his new quarters. Sharon says she didn't have much time to prepare it, but hopes it's okay. Just then, an assistant arrives with an item she had requested earlier. Thinking it's a gift, he gets all excited and thanks her for the unexpected surprise. In reality, it was a plaque for the Abnormal Phenomena Response Committee. Confused, he asks what it is. She tells him it's his new job. Appalled by the name, he complains, and the two start arguing intensely right then and there. Outside, the shouting and chaos could be heard from a distance. Defeated, he sits down as Sharon informs him that she's already decided everything. She explains that he'll be operating on behalf of the guild, fulfilling his contract. Thinking about the danger, he remembers the events that follow Behemoth. He knew the next threat was the metastasis of another very powerful apostle. This phenomenon caused living beings to disappear, but its origin remained a great mystery. However, the true reason behind the apostle's metastasis was already known. Remembering everything, he concludes that Hildur is the real culprit behind it all. According to the prophecy, she plans to use a rod as a sacrifice for the demon realm. Looking at his level, he knows he won't stand a chance against the powerful Hildur. Decided to act, he stands up, knowing he needs to focus on getting stronger. He turns and asks Sharon if she knows how to brew potions. He explains he needs something to cure an easily spread plague. Worried, she asks where it started. He tells her it was in the Fen's kingdom. Upon hearing the kingdom's name, Sharon is completely shocked by the terrible news. He confirms he knows very well that it's an underground city built by dark elves. Apologizing, he warns that the plague has unfortunately already started spreading. Meanwhile, in the elf kingdom, a guard begs Elder Kargan to retreat immediately. Watching the city being consumed, the elder blames humans for the entire attack. Furious, Kargan vows revenge on them for attacking his kingdom this way. He orders all his forces to assemble near the border immediately. Confirming everyone's suspicions, he declares that they are going to war. Back in Elvengard Forest, the sound of the forge echoed everywhere. Jinsong watched the blacksmith's every move intently, waiting for the final result. Amidst the flames, Linus worked non-stop, molding the material with great force. Holding the hammer firmly, he prepared to strike the final blows on the weapon. With one final precise blow, he finally finished his work at the forge. Exhausted, Linus announced that the weapon made from the tentacle was finally complete and ready. Checking the stats, Jinsong thanked him, saying it turned out exactly as he expected. Linus asked what he meant, and Jinsong took the chance to ask for something else. Handing over a steel mold, he asked why Jinsong needed that specific item. Jinsong explained that the item is used to change the appearance of weapons for money. Changing scenes, the player, guessing, walked calmly through the busy streets of the main city. Bored, he commented that he had already completed all his daily and weekly quests there. Suddenly, he heard a message being broadcast to all players nearby. Seeing the ID on screen, he was surprised to see the message was from Jinsong. Using a megaphone, Jinsong started broadcasting his message for the whole city to hear. Announcing via the megaphone, he put the giant lotus tentacle up for sale to everyone. Suddenly, he was startled by a shout he heard directly in his mind. Complaining about the whisper, he realized it was guessing asking what he was selling. To manage a reply, he asked GSD for help with the whisper command. Guessing confirmed it worked and offered 8 million gold for the advertised item. He thanked him for the offer, replying that he was an Elvengard before the conversation ended. Turning around startled, he faced the figure that suddenly appeared right behind him. Right in front of him, a giant white dog stared at him with its tongue hanging out. Getting closer, Guessing's avatar said he came to check his ears personally. Curious, the avatar asked how he managed to get such a rare boss item. Noticing the dog's weapon, he asked what its reinforcement level was. Shocked by the answer, he couldn't believe the item was level 13. He then commented it would be worth it for the main character, but heard a refusal. Understanding nothing, he asked why he had such an expensive weapon then. With a different look, the dog replied it was because the color pink is pretty. Confused by the answer, he couldn't understand his rich friend's logic. Deciding to leave, Jinsong asked what the deal was to finalize the trade. Handing over a pile of coins, Guessing's avatar completed his part of the deal. With payment received, he handed the tentacle sword to his friend's avatar. Saying the sword was cute, the avatar mentioned there was one more thing. Suddenly, he handed Jinsong a huge egg as an unexpected gift. Looking at his reflection, he realized that it was a creature egg. Creatures in the game are pets with varied looks and very strong attributes. Laughing hard, he thanked him, saying he wanted the money precisely to buy a creature. Just then, the egg hatched, revealing a miniature version of the monster lotus vomiting there. With a big smile, he watched the creature finish coming out of the egg. Without thinking twice, he punched the creature with all his might. Seeing his new pet fallen on the ground, he realized he wasn't thinking straight. Guessing asked if it wasn't cute, and Jinsong thanked his friend for the consideration. Apologizing, he said it wasn't the pet's fault, it looked like Lotus. Finding the scene funny, Guessing asked if he wanted to join his guild. Refusing the proposal, he said he didn't want to increase his chances of being caught. He thanked him for the invitation, while Guessing told him to let him know if he changed his mind. Back at the Mage Guild, the sun was already starting to set on the horizon. Entering one of the rooms, he called for Sharon, but didn't find her there. On the table, he then found a letter left especially for him. Starting to read, he saw that Sharon said she believed what he had told her. She explained that a horrible epidemic was turning the dead into monsters in Phoenix. In the letter, she also said the Dark Elves believe it is a human attack. Showing a map, she warned that war between the nations will be inevitable. Adventurers were sent to investigate, finding clues about a possible cure for the disease. Then she mentioned she was sent with an alchemist to develop said cure. Finishing reading, he realized that adventurers were already investigating the disease. He realized he needed to rush to Ophelia because someone had already started the mission. Leaving the room in a hurry, he ended up bumping into Saria right at the door. Introducing himself to Saria, he said he is an official member of the Mage Guild. He then asked if the queen didn't understand the gravity of the situation, and she agreed with. Nearby, two mages complained that an unknown adventurer was chosen for the mission. Saria then defended the adventurer, saying he was the one who saved her in Elvengard. Disdainfully, the mage said that defeating goblins is very different from the current danger. She replied that she knew that because she was watching everything closely and very attentively. Giving her blessings to the adventurer, she prayed for everyone's success in the important mission. Seeing that scene, the three men were completely enchanted by her attitude there. Showing a serene expression, she was viewed by all as a true goddess there. Decided to leave, he realized he couldn't waste any more time and ran out of there. Leaving footprints on the ground, his journey through the dark region had finally begun for him. Walking through the dark forest, he continued his path alone toward the distant mountains. Arriving at his destination, he remained alert for any danger that might arise. Finally, in the Ophelia Mountains, he observed the border territory between enemy kingdoms. Elsewhere, the alchemist Lawton shouted that could have been very bad. Sharon. Lawton said he was happy they had completed the cure for the disease. Impressed, he asked how she knew she needed to prepare all those ingredients. Suddenly, Jin Song appeared and called for Sharon right beside her. With his pet on his face, he said he was there to help with the situation. Scared, Sharon asked what that was, and he said he hadn't named it yet. Not caring, Jin Song warned that things were getting worse very quickly there. She then informed him that the path to the kingdom is blocked by the undead. Looking at the map, he realized the first dungeon had already been completed. He then concluded that the adventurer is completing the hero's catacombs dungeon. There, the hero Lungle will return to become a key piece against the epidemic. Asking for an antidote, Jin Song said he would like to help with the situation up close. Warning of the danger, Sharon handed him a vial and told him not to worry about it. With the antidote in hand, Jin Song stated that he already knew everything about that place. Stepping into the dungeon, the grim air reeked of the danger ahead. Facing a horde of monsters, he advances without a second's hesitation. One monster manages to grab him, but he fights back hard. With a quick strike, he shakes off the creature and presses his attack. Smiling, he remarks that these monsters are no match for his current level. He keeps pushing forward, destroying every monster in his path without pausing. Landing a precise hit, he strikes a creature right in the center of its body. His special ability triggers, and the weapon randomly summons a lotus leg. Using the skill's power, he easily crushes the remaining monsters around him. After the battle, the ground is blanketed with defeated monsters. He knew the disease was spreading because of an apostle's aura. His pet comments on how amazing the weapon is, but he completely ignores it. Moving on, he spots the pillars of the boss room just ahead. Getting closer, he finally confirms that this is the legendary tomb of Lungle. Entering the massive cavern, he walks toward the ancient hero's tomb. Looking at the broken tomb, he wonders why the place is empty. He realizes the hero has already been revived much sooner than he expected. Checking the map, he understands he now needs to go to the Dark Elf tomb. The worst-case scenario would be the Death Dragon raising the dead of Ophelia. His pet comments that there's no treasure here and the place is pretty small. Seeing his pet grab a coin, he shouts at it not to touch anything. Annoyed, he threatens to eat his own pet if it doesn't cut it out. Elsewhere, the adventurer realizes they are completely surrounded by enemies. A swordsman named Blade warns the adventurer to be careful. They were expecting them. Grumbling about arrogance, one of the elf soldiers watches the newcomers approach. Saffron, leader of the elders, says he heard news about the city's invaders. He then thanks them for clearing a path for his troops to advance against everyone. Spears in hand, the elf soldiers prepare for the coming combat. Lungle then says this isn't the time for war and asks him to listen. The hero introduces himself as the Dragon Slayer, an executor of the goddess missions. Identity revealed, he states that his name is the legendary hero Lungle. Shocked, an elf yells that it's impossible and orders all soldiers to stop immediately. Observing his appearance, Queen Maya analyzes him very carefully. She then confirms to everyone that there is no doubt he is the real Lungle. Questioning the elder, she asks if he truly believes the disease is artificial. Running desperately, an elf appears, shouting that it's a major emergency for everyone. As he gets close to the queen, she asks what the problem is. At that moment, a terrifying roar echoes and the queen goes into total shock. Coming from the tomb entrance, green energy reveals the source of it all. Terrified, the elf screams desperately that it's the dreaded death dragon. With the seal finally destroyed, the elf warns that the powerful dragon has awakened. Meanwhile, back at the tomb, Jin Song keeps running as fast as he can. Running down the stairs, he says he's sure the sound is Sparazzi reviving. He realizes everyone is going to unite to kill the fearsome dragon. Reaching the end of the passage, more monsters emerge to block his path. Irritated by the monsters, he says he doesn't have time for this and pushes onward. Already at Sparazzi's tomb, the fearsome death dragon lets out a terrifying roar. Mocking the warrior, he asks how long she thought the seal would work. Without hesitation, Blade charges rapidly toward the dragon to attack with her sword. Using her special attack, she goes all out against the enormous dragon. In response, the dragon prepares to launch a deadly blast of green energy. Mouth open, he fires his powerful blast at the warrior without hesitation. Managing to dodge, Blade lands a devastating hit on the great ancient creature's neck. Seeing the attack, the elves wonder if they finally managed to defeat the fearsome dragon. But suddenly, the dragon retaliates with a quick claw attack in her direction. With no time to react, the attack hits squarely, causing a massive explosion. Regenerating his wounds, he says attacks like that won't do a thing against his body. Desperate, an elf says they can't win and that everyone is going to die here. Ignoring the warning, Blade charges, screaming for the enemy to die once and for all. With a quick movement, she takes another powerful blow from the great dragon, but Lungel blocks it. Wounded, Lungel tells the adventurer that it was fun, thanks to his help. Thanking him for everything, he warns that this is the last thing he will do for them. Inside the cavern, a sound of agony echoes through the darkness. Reaching the pillars, Jin Song realizes he is in the tomb of the fearsome dragon, Sparazzi. Suddenly, a strong beam of light shoots past him at high speed. Hit squarely, the dragon roars in pain from the impact of Lungel's attack. Disintegrating into light, the hero uses his last bit of strength to create an opening. His powerful attack completely pierces the chest of the giant monster in front of him. She then tells them not to waste the unique chance created by the legendary hero. Furious, the dragon demands to know what that elf did to his immortal body. Jumping high into the air, Blade prepares for her coup de grace. With a devastating attack, she delivers a powerful slash against the enormous creature. Taking the hit directly, the dragon roars in pain and recoils from the impact. Greatly weakened, the monster stares at the warrior and curses her with its dying breath. Finishing its attack, the dragon calls them all fools before unleashing its final strike. With the dragon finally defeated, Blade stands over the monster's body. Realizing the body isn't regenerating, the elves confirm that the battle is finally over. Then everyone cheers, shouting that the adventurer and Lungel defeated the terrible death dragon. Arriving at the scene, Jin Song realizes the great battle had already finished without him. Shifting to the kingdom of the Dark Elves, the capital city of Underfoot comes into view. In the throne room, Saffron laments that the plague persists even after the dragon's defeat. He insists that he still believes humans are to blame for everything. Queen Maya disagrees, warning him that he doubts people too much. Saffron reminds her that the plague conveniently allowed humans to find the hero, Lungel. Holding up an antidote, he asks if she really thinks that was all just a coincidence. Facing the queen's silence, he says he's merely suggesting a path of trust. She then questions if that path isn't actually the most difficult one. Looking weary, the queen says everything will get worse if they turn out to be innocent. She asks how they could tell adventurers they can't take the antidote purely out of mistrust. Then she challenges him, asking if he even knows what's inside the city. Within that gloomy place, the sixth apostle, Delazier, the plague itself, is revealed. Cutting away, a notice reveals that Delazier is the cause of the sickness. Checking a map, Jin Song notes that corruption hasn't appeared in the area yet. Even so, he feels like something about this whole story seems off. Thinking about his next move, he runs into a cave heading toward Nufafira. On the way, he comes across a dying dwarf lying on the ground. Seeing multiple bodies and a broken altar, he realizes he's reached the right place. He approaches a strange creature located there in the Tyrant King's dungeon. He recalls that dwarves live on the path leading to the city. Said they fight the Dark Elves for control of the region. Despite being intelligent, they are hostile and attack outsiders without hesitation. That's why they're considered monsters. But it seems someone has already defeated most of them. He stops to think about why they refused to leave this place. Suddenly, the little creature in his hand squeezes itself and makes a sound. With a quick movement, he dodges, escaping a sudden attack. Then he shouts at the creature, whom he calls Taco, telling it to hurry up. He explains the nickname is because it looks like a takoyaki ball. But right after, he looks up with an expression of total shock. Before him, a giant golden figure emerges, and he wonders what it is. He then remembers the dwarves don't leave because of the gold tunnel. Realizing where he is, he's shocked to remember that specific game setting. Reaching out, he discovers he can actually touch one of the gold bars. Without waiting, he starts stashing all that treasure straight into his inventory. To his surprise, the gold item is accepted into the system with no issues. Celebrating wildly, he yells to Taco that they are finally filthy rich. He starts grabbing every jewel and piece of gold he can find. Totally euphoric, he throws himself down and rolls around on the mountain of gold coins. Lying on the treasure, he thinks he could live there forever without a care. Just then, bad memories from his past suddenly surface in his mind. Snapping out of the trance, he stands up and says he can't go on like this. Feeling pain, he admits to himself that he's taken things too far. Suddenly, the adventurer Blade appears and attacks a dwarf with her sword. Defeated, the dwarf laments over his gold while Blade watches the scene coldly. Stepping on the coins, she comments that this whole situation is truly surprising. Arriving on the scene, the dark elf Min remark on the secret gold excavation. Seeing Blade and Min moving away, he knows he needs to move fast. He remembers that she is the NPC guide for Nufafira chosen by Saffron. Realizing they went a different way, he decides to follow the group with Taco. Down below, an enormous pile of gold bars filled the cave floor. Scattered everywhere, countless gold coins added to the vast treasure. Suddenly, he hears a weird sound and wonders what's happening. Then a giant explosion erupts right in the middle of the accumulated gold on the floor. The impact violently throws him backward from the powerful detonation. Flying uncontrollably through the air, he and the little creature are tossed far away. Next, the entire cave floor collapses, creating a massive hole. Changing scenes, a giant shadow appears over the dark city of Nefurfra. Moving quickly, the shadow descends and spreads between the city buildings. Bracing against the ground, the monstrous creature uses its enormous claws to steady itself. Confused, the apostle Delizzy looks around and wonders where he is. Not understanding, Delizzy questions why he's there, saying this wasn't his destination. Suddenly, he recalls the image of Hildur smiling sinisterly. Then a portal opens, explaining how he ended up in that new world. Remembering everything, he yells, asking who thought he would follow the plan. With extreme fury, he screams Hildur's name, promising to rot the entire planet. A sinister shadow begins to creep slowly across the city buildings, spreading into the street. It manifests as the illusion of disease itself. Through her glasses, Blade observes the enemy with a dead serious look. Watching the creature, she hears it call itself the Vision of Destruction. The monster then warns that the lands will be blanketed by the scent of death. Before the two women, it introduces itself as Delazier, the terrible Black Plague. Back at the palace, Blade recounts everything that happened in the city of Noirfarer. Saffron confirms that Delazier is the true culprit behind all the problems. Agreeing with him, Iris Fortune Singer states that everything occurred exactly as she foresaw. She introduces herself as the seer who can aid in the current situation. She explains she came to resolve any misunderstandings regarding humans. Then she warns that for the sake of Arad, they must defeat the apostle. With the issues resolved, the Dark Elves and humans finally forge an alliance. Leaving the kingdom, the adventurer sets off toward Delicia's current location. Arriving in North Mire, she sees the city of Grozny protected by a barrier. Hordes of infected creatures advance with total fury against the city's defenders. Desperate, one guard shouts for everyone to stop the monsters from entering the city. He warns that there are too many enemies and they need urgent help. Then, one warrior shouts Michelle's name, calling for quick support. Concentrating her energy, she fires a powerful attack against one of the infected creatures. A teammate asks her to hang on, but she asserts they won't lose their sanctuary. A flashback shows they were persecuted for having different abilities. That city, Grozny, was the only place where ciphers could live in peace. Back to the fight. The disease drives people mad, leaving them with primal instincts. Even while fighting, Michelle admits she doesn't know how long they can resist the attack. Suddenly, warns that something breached the barrier and goes to investigate. Running through the city, she wonders if what she was looking for is finally here. Arriving at the spot, she encounters a huge monster causing massive destruction. But looking closer, she notices something strange about the scene. Surprised, she sees Jean Song-Beck and wonders what a human is doing there. Relieved on the ground, he claims a giant tentacle saved him from the fall. Looking around, he realizes he arrived too late and the story here is over. Thanks to a potion, he managed to gain a 2-day lead on the adventurer. Arriving in the city of Grozny, he celebrates being the first one there. With a confident smile, he announces he'll take the lead from now on. Just then, he's surprised by Michelle Monaghan, who asks how he got there. She questions what he is and he tries to explain himself quickly. He soon realizes that excuse won't work against her suspicion. Unexpectedly, she smiles and says the situation is perfect for her plans. Then she asks for help, saying she needs a safe place for her friends. He just stares at her for a moment, ignoring her plea for help. While she begs for a safe passage, he points his weapon and asks why. Confused, she asks what he means, but he just starts laughing. Laughing, he reveals he's there to hunt ciphers like her. At that moment, something huge stomps on the ground, revealing it had finally appeared. Suddenly, the corruption emerges and attacks Michelle, who screams in surprise. Seeing her ask for help, he understands the corruption has affected the original story. She gets furious and yells at him to shut up, calling him a mutant. Smiling, he accuses her of causing the disease along with the other ciphers. Understanding the provocation, she prepares to fight against the so-called normal humans. Then she advances with her clones, saying she'll end him once and for all. But seeing the power of the attack, he wonders if he overdid it a little. Suddenly, a new player emerges firing, destroying Michelle's clones rapidly. By the skills, he realizes that person is actually the adventurer Blade. He then understands he can't let Michelle get angry at someone who came to help. Irritated, Michelle complains that the adventurer shouldn't have arrived so soon. He remembers that the adventurer is very strong and helps everyone there. Without a choice, he warns he's leaving but tells her to be careful next time. At that moment, another adventurer appears and asks if she really is Michelle. Introducing herself as Louise, she says she came to investigate the disease under orders from the principality. At the defense barrier, Michelle turns and asks the newly arrived adventurers for help. Watching the scene from afar, Jin Song hears her say she won't talk to them. Relieved, he believes this solves things, but the card hasn't appeared yet. He then understands this is a symptom, not the true corruption manifesting. He concludes that Hilda is the cause of everything and has finally started to act. Suddenly, Michelle's hat is thrown high into the air by a strong impact. With the explosion, Blade turns and sees the girl hitting the ground right after. Luis then warns that they aren't there to fight, only to talk. With no time to lose, he decides to look for other sources of corruption on his own. His plan is to follow them to the village of Pain, where they will finally find Delazier. The trio advanced carefully down the dark, dangerous street. Louis sounded surprised. The barrier was actually blocking the plague. Michelle reminded them not to forget their promise to protect the ciphers. Jin Song emerged from hiding. He approached them, asking them to wait a moment. Smiling, he told them to listen to someone named Azalea Lot. Totally confused, the woman named Azalea demanded to know who he really was. It was revealed that Hilda's plan was to make the adventurer kill the apostles. To stop this, a secret organization called the Grim Seekers was created to protect them. He pointed at the woman, revealing her as the true leader of that organization. He realized she had been following the group of adventurers just as he suspected. To move forward, he knew he would need the barrier Michelle created ahead. Saying he needed her help, he introduced himself as Jin Song with a suggestion. He explained that to stop Hilda, they couldn't kill the Apostle Dulasai. He asked if that wasn't her main concern, leaving her completely shocked. She was stunned to realize he knew everything about her secret organization. He said she didn't need to trust him. He just wanted to stop Hilda's plans. She realized that despite their different methods, the end result would be the same. Remembering the past, she saw herself before a mysterious figure holding the same ideal. Back in the present, she faced him, making an important decision about the future. Dropping her staff, she asked his name again, surprised by his knowledge. Then she decided to ask no more questions, just as others had done with her in the past. He warned that Delizy was in the city of Reshpan and asked for her help. Giving her something to resist the plague, he said a cheerful goodbye to Taco. Watching him leave, she said perhaps he could go where she could not. Opening his status window, he saw his level was now 38. Surprised, he wondered if it was possible to level up just by living through events. With a new plan in mind, he prepared for the next leg of the journey. The scene shifted. The adventurers faced corruption and monsters without retreating. Through a window, the full moon was visible in the dark city sky. Lizzie welcomed them while Azalea warned that death didn't apply to that monster. Watching the battle, he wondered how they could defeat such an immortal creature. Soon, Hildur would open the interdimensional rift, a plan to seal the entity. Inside that subspace, Delizy would be trapped in an infinite cycle of regeneration. He would be sealed forever with no chance of escaping that prison. But using its last remaining strength, the monster managed to break the dimensional rift. It grabbed the adventurer and disappeared with her from that place. In that moment, Jin Song felt the effects of the plague in his own body. Seeing an attack coming, Azalea stepped in front to try and protect him. With a powerful blow, the monster threw her forcefully against the rocks. Fallen on the ground, she was incapacitated, unable to continue fighting the great apostle. The force of the impact left her bleeding heavily on the ground. Then, the protective barrier covering him began to fail rapidly. He realized he hadn't expected this now that Azalea was knocked out. Delizy warned him to come before he consumed the entire world. Then Michelle advanced, attacking the apostle with all her strength and power. Being consumed by the plague, he was violently attacked by the dark creature. The monster's eye stared at him, intensely reflecting his image. That darkness began to cover his face, taking over his body. The scene changed, his consciousness falling into a dark, broken void. In one of the fragments, a memory of his old life as a streamer appeared. He continued falling aimlessly, looking up with a confused expression. Then various memories of his journey in the game flashed before his eyes. Understanding he was dying, a voice told him not to accept his fate. His game avatar then appeared, confronting his real-world version. The voice kept saying that only he could decide what would happen. With a serious look, his avatar warned that he needed to choose his own destiny. With determined eyes, he finally made an important decision about his future. Back in reality, Taco poured several healing potions onto his body. Waking up confused, he realized his wounds had disappeared and asked about the adventurer. Looking at the sky, he noticed the smoke had dissipated and the air was clear. Watching from afar, Michelle and Azalea wondered if the battle was finally over. Azalea confirmed Delizy was gone and declared victory for the great adventurer. Hidden, Jin Song watched the whole scene with an expression of total confusion. Not understanding, he wondered how the adventurer was still there since she should have disappeared. Then the little creature, Taco, finally seemed to understand what was happening. Suddenly, he was grabbed by something dark, recognizing it as the corruption. While fighting, he said he just needed to open the rift again, but he wasn't sure. Even so, he felt confident that now he could make it work. Out of potions, he knew it would be the end if he was exposed to the plague. Warning that he needed focus, he asked for silence to feel for what he was looking for. Finally, he managed to sense the small opening between different dimensions. With glowing eyes, he prepared to use a new unknown power. When Lewis suggested they go back, Michelle asked her to wait just a moment. Pointing to the ground, she showed the others a strange crack that had appeared. Using his energy, Jin Song screamed as he tried to force open the dimensional rift. Feeling the poison act, he kept forcing the crack with all his might. With a cry of pain, he used everything he had to open the passage. Emerging from the rift, a shadowy hand appeared, startling the warrior Michelle nearby. Then the adventurer Blade returned from the portal, surveying the scene very calmly. Appearing right after, Delizy attacked the adventurer with all its fury. Disbelieving, Michelle screamed the monster's name and asked how it had returned. A shadowy voice lamented that Hildur's plan would have worked without his interference. Exhausted on the ground, he could barely believe he had actually managed to make it work. Thanking Taco, he said they needed to get back to the guild for treatment. But before leaving, a portal opened behind his back. Looking around, Azalea realized the adventurer Blade had disappeared from that spot. Confused, she looked at the portal and saw the little creature floating there alone. Fueled by the memory of their previous fight, Delizy attacks the adventurer with full fury. Michelle shouts his name in disbelief, stunned that he managed to return. Thanking Taco for the potion, he says they need to get back to the guild house. He turns and faces the dimensional rift he opened himself. Suddenly, he notices something strange emerging from the dark portal. As he's pulled inside, panic sets in. He doesn't understand why the rift is doing this. A dark hand grabs Taco, snatching the little creature into the void. He screams in pain as that same hand clamps down hard on his face. Inside the void, the adventurer's shoe floats, lost in the middle of nowhere. A powerful vortex begins sucking up everything around it. Fighting the strong current, he tries to grab onto something to keep from being swept away. On the other side of the rift, a violent storm hits him hard. He tries to activate an ability, but his body starts tearing apart right there. That's when he spots Blade, the adventurer, floating unconsciously right in front of him. Blade floats inside while he watches everything from a distance. Suddenly, a massive barrier of light begins forming rapidly around the area. She becomes trapped inside a large protective sphere of energy. From his platform, he watches the barrier seal itself around the sphere. Running with determination, he launches himself forward with all his might. Using a quick movement skill, he tries to get inside before the barrier closes completely. He succeeds, making it through the portal at the very last second. Once inside, he readies his weapon to strike the core. He hits the center of the sphere, trying to shatter the protective barrier. After succeeding, he lands on the ground and breathes a sigh of relief for a moment. Suddenly, a dark fragment hits the floor and he feels sharp pain. Scene change. A mysterious soldier appears lying fallen in a dark location. Blade shatters a crystal wall, invading the secret area. She complains about Imperial soldiers and their ghost arm experiments. She advances and attacks one of the soldiers, who yells at her for being an intruder. Lying on the ground, he finally realizes he's inside Blade's awakening story. Watching her fight, he realizes this place is a temporary awakening dungeon. In this system, adventurers overcome past traumas to become stronger. While she fights illusions, Blade can't recognize that he's actually there. Looking around, he notices the barrier is holding back the dimensional storm. Relieved to be alive, he says he wouldn't have survived out there for long. Suddenly, a strange sound catches his attention, coming from some black goo. He turns quickly and is shocked by what he sees emerging right there. The Apostle Delizy suddenly appears before him inside the safe dimension. Constantly being destroyed and regenerating, the monster is suffering greatly from the surrounding storm. Deciding to ignore the creature, he focuses on following the adventurer so he can escape. He knows he needs to leave with her when she opens the rift again. His plan is just to follow Blade in silence until the right moment. Then, a dark fragment hits him and something begins dripping from his chest. The dark slime starts spreading rapidly from the hole in his body. Shocked, he realizes the fragment entered through that crack. The dark goo spreads, shattering the crystals and growing much larger. Approaching him, the creature stops and stands motionless in front of him. Falling to the ground, the monster Delizy seems to be in great pain and suffering. Seeing the monster, despair sets in as he realizes he's in a bad situation. The plague begins overtaking the entire environment around him. Weakened, Delizy says he needs to return to his own demon realm. Suddenly, Jin Seong charges with a quick attack, striking the crystal wall. He manages to open a hole in the wall, drawing the monster's attention. Through the opening, the monster sees the adventurer Blade on the other side of the barrier. Calling her Hilder's puppet, he charges with full force to kill her without hesitation. Jin Seong steps in front, trying to block the monster's attack, but it's useless. As he's pierced, the monster asks who he is, surprised by his interference. He feels something strange piercing his hand and glances to the side. Several black spikes grow from his arm and attack the monster forcefully. He kicks an energy sphere, preparing for a new battle right there. Realizing he hasn't been affected by the plague, he wonders why. Seeing a chance, he advances and uses a wave skill against Delizy. Falling to the ground, the monster says he now remembers everything about Hilder. Enraged, he screams that everything is that woman's fault. Blade then says she will never forgive any of them for what happened. She fires several attacks, and he dodges the bursts as best he can. He complains that the attacks are unpredictable and the monster keeps regenerating. Dodging once more, he creates distance and tries to think of a new plan. Irritated, the monster asks if he's just going to keep running away from the fight. Seeing an opening, he stops running and turns to face the monster. He fires a ball of dark energy that hits Delizy dead on. With 200% of his power, he prepares for the final blow. Using Shadow Smasher, he attacks the monster with everything he has. After the attack, he collapses to the ground, panting and completely drained of energy. Knowing he can't kill it, he just needs to delay its regeneration for a while. In that time, he advances and prepares for a new attack against Delizy, but the monster retaliates and strikes him. He barely dodges at the last second. Blood splashes everywhere from the force of the quick attack. Even though he's wounded, he manages to stand up, ready to keep fighting. Delizy praises his good senses, but doesn't seem very impressed. The monster attacks with its claws, piercing his legs. With an air of contempt, it says it would have been easier to just die. Suddenly, the dungeon ceiling begins to collapse on top of the two fighters. Desperate, he wonders why the dungeon is crumbling for no reason. Blade appears in a passageway, ready to leave the area. Seeing this, he realizes she has already finished her class awakening. The monster Delazy looks up and realizes that's his exit. Lying on the ground, Jinsong says he won't just let him escape. Delazy invites him to feel his body being destroyed by the strong storm. On the ground, he asks if this is all some kind of joke. He remembers that, because of Delazy, many people have already died in the city. Enraged, he screams that thousands of innocents have died because of this. The monster says it finds that all very interesting. It continues, saying everyone tried to kill it just for existing in the world. Then it asks who the boy thinks he is to determine what's right. Desperate, Jinsong warns that leaving now is playing right into Hilder's plans. Delazy lands and calls him trash, but admits he knows a lot. Seeing the monster escape, he yells for it to stop, but it's too late. Feeling the plague consume him, he shouts Delazy's name with all his might. A massive sphere of energy began forming in the center of the dungeon. Seeing Delazy escape, he screamed desperately for the monster to stop right now. Suddenly, the monster whipped around in surprise, confused by what was happening. It looked up and saw Jinsong standing on one of the platforms. Fist clenched, he warned the monster that it wouldn't escape. Shocked, Delazy wondered how he had managed to close the dimensional rift alone. Furious, the monster charged, yelling at him to reopen the portal immediately. He took the attack full-on, thrown violently backward. Calling him an insect, Delazy hurled him against a rock wall. Even wounded, he braced himself to defend against the giant monster's next strike. He managed to block the blow with his arm, withstanding the heavy impact. The defense made the monster flinch, and it recoiled for a moment. Exhausted, he said he had no more time or energy to keep fighting. He yelled that he'd saved its life, but Delazy warned that now they were trapped. Warning him not to get in its way, the monster prepared to charge. With a wounded face, he looked at the monster with sheer determination. He then said that Delazy could have wandered through a rod spreading the plague, yet it had never left the city of Reshpan the entire time. Shouting, he claimed the monster knew exactly why. Irritated by his words, Delazy growled at him to shut up. Jinsong then said it wasn't because it didn't care about life. With a sad look, he stood up and faced the giant monster. He continued saying that what Delazy really wanted was to go back home. The monster screamed furiously for him to shut up, refusing to hear anymore. Approaching it, Jinsong stared it down and kept talking. He said he might be the only human in this world who could understand it. Claiming he knew what that felt like, he stopped in front of the monster. He went on to say that if they helped each other, they could both go home. With a new look in his eyes, he finished his sentence with absolute certainty and hope. Delazy seemed confused and asked what he meant by all that. Furious, Delazy attacked, shouting, asking if he really thought he could understand it. It continued, saying an insect like him wouldn't understand its suffering. Jinsong blocked the blow with his arm and readied himself for the next attack. Being pushed back, he yelled back at the monster that he did know. He explained that he woke up in a strange place and was forced to fight. Looking out the window, he said he just wanted to know how to get back home. He finished by saying the stars he saw weren't the ones he knew. Seeing its reflection, Delazy finally seemed to begin understanding the whole situation. It realized it might have something in common with a mere human. After a moment, Delazy warned that the rift still wasn't closed. Seeing the crack, it excitedly asked Jinsong to open the passage right now, but he explained there was no point in leaving as Hilder would find it immediately. He also warned that Delazy wouldn't even be able to touch her shadow like this. Being a great mage, Hilder could easily manipulate the apostles however she pleased. The monster then understood there was a variable even Hilder couldn't predict. He said they were actors who should have already left the stage. With his wounded face, he explained that Hilder thought Delazy was dead. If it jumped into the climax of the play, it could end everything once and for all. Calling it a fair trade, he looked at the monster with determination. With a shout, he proposed they fight the enemy together. Delazy then asked why he wanted it to stay if he was going to leave. He sincerely admitted he'd had many chances to escape that place alone. Even so, he decided to stay and fight the enemies that appeared. Warning that they had no time, he shouted Delazy's name, waiting for an answer. The monster turned its face away, finally seeming to consider his proposal. As he tried to escape, tentacles wrapped around him, freezing him in place. Angrily, he asked if Delazy was going to stay trapped forever because of its ego. As he shouted its name, the dungeon began to destroy itself around them. With a desperate look, he tried to free himself from the monster's claws. Being pulled in, he was enveloped by darkness, unable to do anything else. Delizzy said it had no intention of helping him, but it was interested. He agreed with a smile, but Delizzy demanded he prove himself first. Confused, he asked what he needed to do to earn its trust. The monster grabbed him, saying that if he couldn't, he was nothing. Angrily, he shouted at the monster, telling it to see with its own eyes. He said he could transform a piece of it into his trusty clone. With a laugh, Delizzy finally accepted the alliance proposal between them. Taking flight, it wrapped him in its wings to protect him from the fierce storm. The monster then asked what his plan was to escape. Looking at the tiny rift, it wondered how they would pass through that crack. The passage out was too small and was almost closing. With a smile, he said all they needed now was propulsion. Delizzy then gathered all its energy to launch him forcefully toward the exit. Before the launch, the monster asked for his real name. Jinsong prepared to answer the question and escape that place. With a powerful thrust, he was launched toward the dimensional rift. Firing an energy attack, he tried to pass through the tiny opening in space. Far away, the small dimensional rift continued closing faster and faster. Using all his strength, he focused power into the weapon on his arm. An energy drill surged forward, piercing the rift at the very last second. After passing through, the portal closed completely behind him in the void. Landing on the other side, he knelt on the ground, finally safe. With a shout of relief, he celebrated, saying he had finally succeeded. Suddenly, something hit him and threw him hard against the ground. He yelled at Taco not to hug him, saying he was going to die like that. Back at the rift, Delizzy said it would be waiting for him, calling him Jinsong. Sharon is barking orders. Prioritize the hospital. Help the refugees from North Meyer. Wrapping up the meeting, she tells them the rest can wait until tomorrow and thanks them for their work. Alone now, she vents. She hasn't had a moment's rest since that incident with Ophelia. She wonders where that adventurer could be during such a messy time. Suddenly, a voice calls out to her. She freezes in the hallway, completely stunned. Jinsong appears right in front of her, covered in wounds, asking if she has any spare potions. Out of strength, he collapses onto the floor immediately after, totally exhausted. Scene change. We see the exterior of the massive guild headquarters at night. Sometime later, Jinsong finally begins to wake up, still a bit groggy and disoriented. Opening his eyes, he tries to understand what happened and where he is now. He looks around, recognizing the place as the guild leader's quarters. A voice asks if he's finally awake, holding a potion in hand. It was Sharon. She asks how he feels, letting him know she healed his visible wounds. Thanking her, he comments that his body feels stiff. She says that's no surprise. She reveals he's been unconscious for a week, sending Jinsong into a total panic. Telling him not to misunderstand, she warns that she has no intention of returning anything. A magical barrier forms, completely sealing all doors to the room. Cornering Jinsong, she demands he answer her questions with absolute sincerity. Then she questions his intent in bringing a fragment of Delizzy into the city. She asks if he grasps the danger, warning that depending on his answer, she will report him. Without a good excuse, he decides to tell her the whole truth. He reveals he actually fought Delizzy, which catches Sharon completely by surprise. Jinsong explains that someone was using Delizzy's power to attack the Arad continent. Furious, she asks if he's defending Delizzy, reminding him of the deaths it caused. He says he made a deal, helping with its revenge in exchange for survival. Baring his chest, he reveals the fragment serves to monitor if he keeps the agreement. Disbelieving, she questions why he would ever make a deal with one of the apostles. He begs Charon to please help him use the fragment's powers. She asks if he understands what that means, but he insists he has a plan. Looking straight at her, he firmly asks her to trust him. He says he doesn't want a disease like that spreading through the city either. With a serious look, she asks if he understands how much they've already suffered. Approaching him, she decides she'll pretend she never heard anything he just said. Extending her hand, she begins using her magic to break the fragment's containment. She warns that she's also going to pretend this has nothing to do with her. Thanking her profusely, he's relieved, but she says she doesn't believe he's right. In a flashback, she explains she's only repaying a favor because he saved funnies. She warns that the purification process will take quite a while to finish. He agrees, but then remembers to ask Charon where his equipment is now. She shows him his sword. It's been completely corrupted by Delizzy's plague. In despair, he cries, while she explains the disease spread to everything. He thinks it wouldn't even do any good to go to Linus the blacksmith without any materials. On second thought, he decides that since he leveled up, he can just buy something brand new. With a huge smile, he remembers he has over 100 million gold. Thrilled with life, he starts imagining all the things he can buy now. Walking down the street, he comments that the person ahead looks sexy, but maybe a bit over the top. When they turn around, Jin Sung is totally shocked and speechless. Seeing the bizarre avatar, a girl asks where he got it, scaring Jin Sung. He comments that his eyes hurt, thinking that's worse than Deleuze's plague. He finally understands what avatars are, an appearance-changing system. Unlike skins, they are items that improve stats and strengthen character skills. Deciding he needs one, he resolves to try it out and look for a shop in the city. Arriving at a chic boutique, he's greeted by a welcome sign at the entrance. Two employees, Hills and Dalvi, excitedly invite him into Hills' boutique. Very impressed with the place, he enters as they tell him to take his time looking around. Hills announces their boutique has everything from classics to new releases. Observing the client, Hills calls him a rich hillbilly and plans to empty his pockets. The other employee, Dalvi, confidently says he can leave everything to her without problems. Jin Song realizes he can use the avatar market since the auction is down. Suddenly, a strange figure appears in front of him, leaving the guy completely confused. Showing the catalog, Hills says these are the week's releases for him to see. In case he wants a smoother style, Hills presents another very different option. Jin Song finds it all interesting, but comments that the sensation is like wearing tight clothes. They throw an item on him, saying it's necessary to be the protagonist. Interrupting, he says he doesn't want cosmetics, but a rare clone avatar. Dalvi asks if he happens to be looking for something specific. Receiving the catalog, he notes it's similar to the game's search function. Asking about full sets, he requests she bring them out since they aren't in the catalog. He analyzes the options, asks about enhancements, and asks to sort by price. Afterward, he asks if he can take just the hair and belt from a set. He then asks her to show him the first item she brought again. Completely buried under catalogs, she asks what he thought of the final result. With the new avatar, he now has several bonuses to his general attributes. Satisfied, he comments that the rare clone avatar is perfect because it's discreet and useful. He asks for the total cost while she tallies up the values. Dalvi informs him the total is 200 million gold, leaving Jin Song stunned. Trying to sneak away, he leaves a little money on the floor and bolts. He says he'll come back another time, but she grabs him and asks where he thinks he's going. Back in the guild room, the purification process continued without pause. Sharon focused her magic. She was trying to contain and cleanse the item's dark energy, but she couldn't do it. It was sucking up all her mana. The fragment reacted violently, devouring even more of her power. Furious, Sharon decided if it was that hungry, she would feed it. She unleashed a massive magical attack, pouring everything she had into the fragment. The energy slammed hard against the guild room wall. Despite her efforts, the fragment's power spun out of control. The pressure was too much. The seal began to crack. The containment exploded, blasting dark energy throughout the entire room. Sharon screamed desperately as the energy rushed straight at her. Suddenly, Jin Song appeared. He yanked her out of harm's way just in time. "That was close," he said. She just stared at him, totally shocked to see him there. The dark energy gathered in the center of the room, taking a new shape. Jin Song thanked her and cheered. She had done it. He showed off the newly created armor set. It had the exact attributes he remembered. Sharon thanked him for saving her, but asked how he predicted the attack. Just then, Dalvi popped up at the window. She demanded he pay his 100 million gold bill immediately. Sharon just watched the whole awkward scene in silence. Looking sheepish, Jin Song asked if she could lend him another 50 million gold. The scene shifted to a gigantic promissory note totaling 1.5 billion gold. Holding the massive debt, he insisted they needed to get to the gold tunnel immediately. His familiar reminded him that the armor problem was solved. He had the RT Marpisa. Jin Song noted he only got that item thanks to the familiar's weird habit of picking up trash. Now he needed a weapon. NPC vendors sold weak garbage. To get something decent, he had to use the auction house. He stopped in the middle of the street. Something was definitely wrong. He approached another player, explaining the auction house was down and asking for a huge favor. The guy flat out refused without a second thought. He tried someone else, but she said his story sounded suspicious and wouldn't help either. Giving up on begging, decided to try a different approach. Elsewhere, a man was screaming for pure guessing, demanding an immediate response. Jin Song used a megaphone item, calling for the guild leader to meet him in Hendon Mire. Unable to find him, Jin Song decided he had no choice. He had to move to the next area. The scene shifted to a snow-covered mountain pass known as Storm Pass. Inside a deep cavern, the floor was coated in thick ice. Suddenly, a massive ice dragon emerged. It was Skasa, the boss of the region. A voice called out Skasa's name from the darkness of the cave. A flashback revealed two other dragons, Hisma and Sparazzi, being called by that same voice. A mysterious figure ordered his minions to finally advance and begin the battle. He commanded them to spread fear throughout Era to strengthen their will. The scene then showed the bloody aftermath of a violent battle. Hisma and Sparazzi lay completely defeated on the ground after the intense confrontation. Seeing his fallen brothers, Skasa asked why they had gone down so quickly. The mysterious figure suddenly emerged from the shadows right behind the ice dragon. The figure stated that he had placed his full trust in the ice dragon. Sudden intense pain racked Skasa's body, and the dragon began to writhe uncontrollably. Screaming the name Bakel, Skasa promised to do whatever was necessary. He swore to wipe out every useless human he found. Overwhelmed by a strange power, he bellowed that he would do anything for his master, Bakel. With his final reserves of strength, he repeated his vow to destroy them all without exception. Defeated, he collapsed to the ground, calling out his lord's name one last time. Back in the present, the scene returned to the icy mountains of Storm Pass. Jin Sung arrived and scanned the camp with a serious watchful eye. He spotted members of the Bantu tribe and remembered their family alliance. Remaining hidden, he wondered what was going on. It was strange that they were still here. He thought the story should have moved forward by now. Suddenly, a voice called out, "Outsider." A warrior leaped in front of him, warning him that this was Banta territory. Seeing the other warriors, Jin understood the situation. The man ordered him to leave. The warrior confronted him, demanding to know why he was there. Jin tried to warn them that they needed to run, but they scoffed, asking if they should run from him. He yelled that the real danger was the monster Skasa, the ice dragon. The warrior repeated the name, confused and disbelieving. Suddenly, Jin Song was ensnared by ropes. The warrior told him he was going to let him go, but he had changed his mind. Tied up, Jin Song heard the man say, "It seems you really want to die quickly." Racing across the mountain, he tries to shake the warriors hot on trail. One warrior shouts for him to stop, hurling a sharp weapon his way. He effortlessly pulls out a blade that fires magical power. Then he blasts an energy projectile from his mouth at the others. Taken completely by surprise, they wonder when he got that kind of sword. Focusing his energy, he readies another shot to attack again. Suddenly, the projectile explodes right in front of them, catching everyone off guard. Wincing in pain, he mentions the damage was worse than he thought. Spitting out the weapon, he calls it lucky he got rid of it in time and keeps running. He stumbles and falls off a cliff. Landing on something soft, he's confused about what just happened. Then he realizes he landed right on the belly of a mountain yeti monster. Relieved to be saved, he thinks he's lucky they were asleep. But the monster punches him, yelling that it didn't save anyone. Thrown back by the monster, he apologizes, saying it wasn't on purpose. Just then, a familiar voice asks if Jin Song happened to be looking for him. Grabbing a consumable item, he prepares to use the object from his inventory. Wasting no time, he hurls the flask forward with all his might. A giant dog appears. He explains he heard about it from a guild member. Saying they can talk later, he tells him he needs a very important favor right now. Looking at the auction screen, the other player seems to think over the request. He says he'll look but suggests Jin Song use monster items first. While waiting, he hopes his friend finds something useful soon. We see a map of the region showing Skasa's lair and the Bantu tribe. The original lore shows the tribe fleeing Skasa and invading other territory. Seeing the story hasn't started, he wonders if he needs to wake Skasa alone. The friend then alerts him that he found something, but it'll cost 10 million gold. He wonders how a newbie got that much money while Jinseong watches him closely. Switching to the real world, someone is typing furiously on a keyboard. On the computer, the player asks how many items he needs, finding the request odd. Thinking about it, he finds it bizarre that someone needs 100 useless items. Then he remembers Jinsong had access to very old super rare items. He starts suspecting Jinsong might actually be a major hacker. Back in the game, an awkward silence fills the air between the two players. Turning to his familiar, he tells the creature to stop making noise now. Meanwhile, in the real world, the player keeps staring thoughtfully at the computer screen. Deciding not to get involved, he just wishes Jinsong luck and says goodbye. New weapon in hand, he finally celebrates getting what he wanted. Walking through the village, he thinks about how to reach Skas's nest unseen. He analyzes his options, but both the potion and the ship are unfeasible now. Then he spots a tavern sign and seems to have a great idea. Recognizing the place, he thinks the Moonlight Tavern might be the ideal solution. Convinced, he enters the tavern to try and get some useful information. Right at the entrance, he bumps into someone causing a huge commotion. Arriving at the tavern door, he asks them to just say what they want. Caracas then asks who's been spreading those rumors about him around town. The other guy shouts, doubting the story about fighting a mage. Out of patience, Caracas grabs him hard and says it's time to go. Then he asks Jinsong if he wants to fight about it too. Smiling, Jinsong asks him to tell the mole story in detail. Scene change. They are now outside the tavern talking. Drunk, Caracas praises the drink and asks where he got something so rare. 3 hours have passed, and Jinsong is getting tired of all the stories. Bringing the subject back, he asks again about the mole story. Jinsong says he believes him but wants to ask a special favor. He asks if he could possibly catch a ride on one of those moles. Very excited, Caracas agrees, immediately saying they can go right now. Pausing a moment, he asks Jinsong what their destination is. He reveals he wants to go to the top of the Storm Pass Mountains. Caracas asks why not just ask for help, but Jinsong says he needs to be discreet. Taking him to a clearing, Caracas announces they've finally reached their destination. Surprised by the place, Jinsong asks if this is where the giant moles are. Without warning, Caracas rushes forward, preparing a sudden attack on Jinsong. He lands a powerful kick squarely on Jinsong, knocking him back hard. Caught off guard by the attack, Jinsong can't understand what's happening. Caracas grabs him, accusing him of wanting to cause trouble for the Banta tribe. He then reveals that the tribe's leader is a great personal friend of his. Desperate, Jinsong asks for calm, saying he's not trying to hurt anyone in the tribe. Caracas tells him to shut up, yelling that he doesn't need any more excuses. Focusing his strength, the man prepares to continue the attack without hesitation. Jinsong interrupts him, reminding him that he listened to his stories for 3 long hours. Grabbing his fist, Jinsong suggests it's now his turn to listen. Suddenly, his power explodes outward, forming a creature of golden energy. Everything around them explodes as the energy spreads through the dark forest. The explosion threw them both clear. Caracas groaned, complaining about the pain in his ears. Struggling to his feet, Caracas cursed Jinsong for the sudden attack he just suffered. Jinsong held up an item. He asked just what the hell he was holding right now. Then he tossed the box right at Caracas, catching him off guard. Without hesitating, Caracas smashed the object with a single punch, causing a small blast. Using the opening, Jinsong charged in, aiming a direct hit at his opponent. Caracas realized with fury that it had all just been a simple distraction. Suddenly, a giant mole's tail burst from the ground, taking Jinsong completely by surprise. He threw himself backward, dodging the attack. Caracas scolded the mole, yelling that he told it not to come out until called. The giant mole finally fully emerged, leaving Jinsong shocked at what he was seeing. Caracas told them to carry on and approached, but Jinsong insisted it was a misunderstanding. Seeing the lack of trust, Jinsong came up with a new plan based on his backstory. Bowing respectfully, he apologized and introduced himself as Jinsong, stating he was on a mission. Declaring himself the president, he displayed an official scroll from the Mage Guild. Caracas asked if it was from Sharon's guild, sensing the scroll was genuine. Jinsong announced he hadn't come to hurt the tribe, but to save them. He then lied, claiming he received direct orders from Sharon herself for this mission. After a moment of silence, the two finally seemed to reach an agreement. Inviting him up, Caracas asked if the mole could make it to Storm Pass. Caracas warned he would charge a fee, but Jinsong begged him not to create another debt. Trying to argue, he reminded him that he at least paid for the drinks they had together. Traveling through the underground tunnel, he was tossed from side to side. From above, Caracas just watched as the mole disappeared into the hole. Smiling, he repeated Jinsong of the guild's name to himself. Feeling sick from the ride, Jinsong complained that he was feeling very nauseous now. Nearing their destination, the mole sensed something strange straight ahead. Suddenly, blue energy began to completely envelop the great mole's claws. Frightened, the mole stopped abruptly, not understanding what was happening to it. A ghostly creature appeared in front of it, leaving the animal completely paralyzed. Confused, he asked why the mole had suddenly stopped in the tunnel. Feeling intense pain, the mole began screaming desperately while digging non-stop. bursting out of the ground, the mole threw Jinzong far away in the process. He was completely stunned by the mole's unexpected and violent exit. The mole began thrashing around, destroying everything nearby without any control. Begging it to stop, he warned that this wasn't the mountaintop. Outside, we see the mole actually crashed through the cave ceiling alone. He complained the mole fled, but at least they arrived at the cave. Remembering Skasa's nest was there, he spotted something strange ahead. Approaching, he realized it was an abandoned Bantu tribe tent. Investigating the site, he concluded it was one of their lookout posts. Relieved the nest was close, he wondered where the tribe had gone. Suddenly, 2 ice spikes formed out of nowhere in the cave air, but Tako slapped Jin Song, making him dodge the spikes. Fallen, a figure emerged and asked who he was, and he recognized the tribe. Smiling, one of them noted the boy seemed fun to fight. Shocked, he noticed their blue skin covered in ice. Beginning to understand the situation, the 2 creatures charged straight at him, ready to attack. Telling his familiar to flee, the enemies taunted him to run as much as he wanted. By their arrogant manner, he was finally certain of what was happening to them all. Known as the Dark Nightmare, this curse causes an uncontrollable desire for pure destruction. He realized they were infected by the terrible Dark Nightmare curse. Asking them to calm down, he warned that something was wrong with them all. Ignoring him, the monster told him to shut up and die already. Suddenly, a Yeti monster appeared behind him and prepared to attack. Also infected, the Yeti roared with dark energy surrounding its entire body. To make matters worse, he realized a Yeti was now a major problem there too. Surprisingly, the monster attacked the other creature who didn't expect its sudden strike. Seeing the fight, he thought this was the perfect chance to escape. Just then, a voice called him an idiot, ordering him to look up, destroying part of the ceiling. A massive snow explosion occurred in the ice cave. A giant Yeti monster appeared, also infected by the strange dark energy. Calling him a fool, a voice warned that Hildur was the least of his problems. Surprised by the voice, he questioned what it was, and it asked why he was surprised. Then the voice said it warned him it was watching him the whole time. Recognizing the voice, he shouted Delazi's name, seeing it was a clone of him. Then the clone asked what cave this was and where Hildur was right now. Apologizing, he said he'd explain everything later, and the clone demanded an answer. Without waiting, the infected Yeti monster charged straight at Jinsong. Preparing for the fight, he activated the fragment's power in his arm. Using his new ability, he unleashed a powerful attack with his energy claws. Landing perfectly, the blow sliced the monster's body with great force. With the enemy finally defeated, he breathed a sigh of relief for escaping danger. The clone complained not to touch him, but Jinzong pointed out the inventory was his. Suddenly, the Yeti monster stood up again, roaring and ready to attack. Several other infected creatures also appeared, charging toward the center of the fight. Seeing the scene, the clone asked if he could handle it, and he answered no. He then said he needed to leave some for the other adventurers to enjoy too. Inside the cave, Jinsong wondered if the Shadow Nightmare was the issue here. He asked if it was the same corruption as before. Tako denied it, saying they were different. Tako explained it was a disease that turned people into monsters, part of the area's original history. Tako flew ahead. Jinsong asked if he'd finally found what he was looking for. Turning toward the mask, the creature seemed confused. Jinsong warned him that it wasn't Lotus. Approaching a large ice crystal, he peeked inside to confirm the location. He was struck by the sheer scale of the place. He realized this was Skasa's nest. Seeing Bakel's creation, Tako asked what Jin Xiang was searching for so carefully. Jin Xiang pressed a device on his arm, activating a mechanism to force entry. With the command active, the mask in his hand began reacting to open the path. Suddenly, the entire ice mountain started shaking violently at their presence. A massive crack split the glacier, indicating something had awakened. Ice erupted, and the dragon Skasa emerged in a fury, knocking Jin Xiang back. Roaring powerfully, the creature demanded to know who dared invade its sacred territory. The dragon shouted that they would pay dearly for waking it from its deep slumber. Tako yelled that he should have warned him, but Jinsong noticed something strange. Looking at the dragon, he realized the creature wasn't infected by the Shadow Nightmare. Jinsong said he hadn't expected that. Tako confronted him, saying he could feel something. Tako explained he felt the same energy the other monsters were emitting earlier, but he added that something seemed to be suppressing that energy from within the dragon itself. Understanding now, Jinsong concluded the corruption was actually maintaining the monster's sanity for the moment. He declared the new plan, make Skasa completely lose his mind. Zai finally understood Jin Song's intention was to enrage the creature further. Running across the battlefield, Jin Song dodged attacks while drawing the dragon's attention. Amidst the attacks, Delezia questioned the plan, but Jin Song told him to wait. He fired projectiles, hitting the ice dragon squarely to irritate it even more. Completely furious, the dragon roared, shouting that he wouldn't escape. Ignoring the warning, Jin Song turned and prepared a new direct attack against Skasa, activating an area of effect ability. He surprised the dragon as it advanced for a final strike. The ability exploded with force, hitting the dragon dead on, kicking up dust and ice. Caught off guard, Skasa called him a fool just as strange boxes appeared around him. The boxes exploded simultaneously, causing more damage and forcing the dragon to retreat. With his sword, he deflected the ice fragments spreading across the battlefield. Seeing this, Tako said the alarm wouldn't work. Jin Song guaranteed it would. Confused by the sound, the ice dragon stared at his opponent, not understanding what was happening. Smiling confidently, Jin Song asked if the dragon was finally starting to remember. He provoked him, asking if it had been a long time since he'd heard that specific voice. Showing the item, he revealed they were the last words of Skasa's brothers before they died. Shouting that it was a lie, Skasa smashed the ground, insisting his brothers would never lose. Jin Song continued the provocation, questioning how his brothers would react to this attitude. Jumping into the air, he prepared a dark attack combo mentioning the dragon's master as well. The attacks flew towards Skasa, who roared furiously at the human's audacity. Reacting forcefully, the dragon fired an ice blast that surprised Jin Song with its speed. Completely enraged, Skasa shouted, asking how he dared disrespect his brothers and master. Dodging a claw, Jin Song noted that the shadow nightmare still hadn't manifested in the dragon. Realizing words wouldn't be enough, he prepared for drastic action. Facing the massive attack, he braced for the inevitable impact of the dragon's charge. Hit squarely by the force, he was thrown backward, spitting blood on impact. Furious, the dragon warned him not to die yet, promising painful destruction. Wounded and panting, he struggled to his feet to continue fighting. With a determined expression, he concentrated on the next step of his risky plan. Shouting that his arm would be first, Skasa attacked but was surprised by several cubes. Now surrounded by strange energy, he left Skasa confused about what was happening. Understanding the stimulus wasn't enough, he began releasing even more power. One cube displayed a number initiating the next phase of his attack. His eye changed color, confirming he now possessed enough mana to continue. Explaining the plan, he said he would use all the cube fragments at once. He declared he would tear time itself apart as his body began to transform. Provoking the dragon, he asked if the creature really didn't believe his words, saying that, if that were the case, he concentrated all energy into his hand. Shouting for the dragon to see with its own eyes, he ripped reality in half. Shocked by the vision, the dragon couldn't understand what was happening right in front of it. Before him, images emerged of his dragon brothers being brutally defeated in battle. Facing his greatest nightmare, he saw himself before one of his fallen brothers. Without understanding why, Skasa stood paralyzed, staring at his own trembling claw. Finding the reaction funny, Jin Song smiled and mocked the ice dragon's nightmare. He revealed that while his brothers fought, Skasa had been hiding and sleeping the whole time. He questioned if the dragon still believed it was all just a dream. Shouting forcefully, he stated that this was the harsh reality, forcing him to accept it. Completely out of control, the dragon denied the truth, consumed by dark energy. Finally understanding, Skasa questioned if it was all really his fault. Full of pain and anger, he roared the name of his master, Lord Bakel. Seizing the moment of vulnerability, Jin Song activated his device to capture the corrupted creature. Skasa's card was created, and Tako suggested they flee immediately. Even weakened, the dragon warned he wouldn't let him escape. With a final effort, he fired a blast of ice, throwing Jin Song backward. Seeing his arm frozen, Jin Song complained that his body was being immobilized by the attack. Shouting, Skasa said he wouldn't let them leave and would end them all. He concentrated his remaining energy, preparing a final attack in Lord Bakel's name. Dodging ice spears, he tried to escape the infuriated dragon's final charge. Skasa's attack formed an ice prison, leaving Jin Song with no exit. With his leg trapped in the ice, he realized he had nowhere left to run. Everything around him began to freeze, reflecting the bizarre scene in his eye, seeing an ice fragment stop mid-air. He couldn't understand what had happened. Looking at the dragon, he realized the creature was frozen in time, shattering. The monster's pieces floated slowly, leaving him even more confused. He wondered what happened, questioning if time had really stopped. Right behind him, a huge clock mechanism appeared, filling the entire landscape. Shocked by the vision, he asked it to wait, realizing something big was about to happen. Pulled into the portal, he and Taco were dragged away by the gears. Still confused, he tries to understand what is happening around him right now. Floating in the void, golden gears begin to spin around him endlessly. Traveling through unknown space, he's swept away by a current of time. Huge hourglasses emerge. They mark the passing of eras in mere seconds. Arriving in a strange place, he wonders where he ended up. Suddenly, a creature appears. It tells him he finally caused a major rupture. Introducing itself as Clifa, the creature asks if he is ready to be judged. Recognizing the creature, Jin Sung is shocked to stand before such a powerful being. Remembering what he saw, he recalls the lion-headed guardian of time. Within the memories Namir showed him, he remembers a very specific event. He remembers the scene where the ranger was punished by that entity. Realizing it's the Time Lord, Clifa warns him that they've been watching him from the start. Surprised, he realizes they know about the goddess. Meanwhile, Deligia analyzes the situation. Clifa then accuses him of crossing the line and traps him in an energy barrier. Explaining the danger, Clifa asks if he understands the gravity of what he's done. Trying to justify himself, he says he couldn't just let the corruption spread unchecked. Clifa questions what the corruption is, but Jin Sung insists that Skasa was being corrupted. Then the Guardian accuses him, saying he was the one who corrupted the dragon with the nightmare. Shocked, he shows the letter and explains that phenomenon is capable of altering the future. Turning around, Clifa asks the others if they understand what the human is talking about. Then the Guardian of the past appears. He explains that the problem has nothing to do with the future. Revealing the Guardians, Bastian says they only sense the rifts he has already made and will make. Jin Song is incredulous. Not even the Time Lords can detect the true corruption there. With glowing eyes, Clifa states that he plans to create more rifts to solve the problem. Accusing the human of interfering, the Guardian declares him guilty of tampering with the timeline. His sentence is announced by Khalifa, who condemns him to 1,000 years of reformation. Desperate, he tries to argue, but Bastin imprisons him, saying it's to maintain order. Trying to use his power, he is warned that attempting to open a rift is useless. Watching the scene, Taco calls the Guardians fools for not understanding what is happening. But Delizzy points downward, showing that the floor of that place is wide open. Then Delizzy points to an energy he senses right below them in the ground. He suggests it might be possible to open a new rift using that energy. Trying to calm them, Khalifa says that 1,000 years is shorter than it seems. Without thinking twice, he uses his weapon to destroy the platform floor. Completely surprised by the attitude, Clifa shouts at the human for his audacity. Jumping towards the core, he says he just needs to reach that artifact. Bastian then appears in front of him, ordering him to stop and turn back while he still can. Ignoring the warning, he dodges the Guardian's attack and keeps going forward. Using one of his skills, he hits Bastin squarely to get rid of him. Desperate, Khalifa flies towards him, screaming for him to stop this madness. Grabbing Jin Sung, the Guardian begs him not to cause any further damage to the place. With a quick movement, he manages to escape Khalifa's clutches and move forward. Apologizing, he warns that he doesn't want to stay there for another second. Finally reaching the energy core, he grabs it with all his might. Releasing its power, the energy explodes and creates a rift that swallows him. Caught by the energy, he feels his body being completely overloaded by the power. But with determination, he keeps holding the artifact to complete his escape plan. Angrily, Clifa warns that he has finally made his final and irreversible decision. Ignoring the warning, he just smiles confidently, ready for whatever comes next. Exploding with force, the energy throws all the Guardians far from the center. In that moment, a new imposing entity emerges amidst all that confusion. Going back in time, the scene shows him grabbing the artifact again to escape. Next, the memory reveals him fighting directly against one of the Guardians of Time. With a temporal crack, a device displays various moments of the timeline. Then the crack in the artifact closes, indicating that time has been fixed. Extending his hands, it seems he managed to escape with Taco on his shoulder. But looking at his own hands, he's confused to be back to normal. Revealing what happened, Bastian says he wanted to believe him, but it wasn't possible. Explaining their action, Clifa recounts that they needed to rewind time to avoid the worst. Warning that it's the end, the guardian imprisons him and tells him to repent. Trapped by the energy, he tries to resist the force holding him firmly. Even sweating cold, he maintains focus, determined not to give in to the pressure. Inside the prison, the guardian warns that it's useless to try fighting the power. With a punch, he hits the barrier, but ends up being thrown back. Then Tako says he can't believe it, while Jin-song screams for the portal to finally open. Yelling that he can't stay, he warns that he won't rot in that place. Using a small item, he tries to force open a portal to escape. Seeing the scene, the guardian is surprised by the artifact's unexpected activation. Suddenly, the device explodes, surprising the guardians with a very bright light. Changing scene, a rift opens in a chaotic sky indicating the escape. Already elsewhere, Delizzy asks how he managed to do that, totally impressed. Questioned about the rift, he denies it, panting and tired from the effort he made. Then he reveals that actually, he wasn't the one who opened the dimensional portal. Looking around, he wonders what destroyed place they ended up in. Back at the sanctuary, they realize it's useless to try turning back time now. Without understanding, the guardian says he shouldn't have enough power for that. Then the guardian remembers the power Jin-song had mentioned shortly before. Analyzing the location, he warns Tako that they were sent to the wrong place. Arriving at the scene, they observe total destruction all around them. Nearby, a massive volcano erupts violently. Tako comments that the place looks like hell. Jin-song questions the absence of the guardians. Stepping into a strange circle on the ground, he wonders who created it. Suddenly, the ground explodes with tremendous force, catching him off guard. Thrown backward, he tries to defend against the impact of the sudden violent blast. A creature suddenly emerges from the flames and lands a powerful punch on Jin-seong. The monster's blow sends Jin-seong flying across the destroyed battlefield. Suffering the attack's impact, he takes the full brunt of the monster's strike. Finding the situation interesting, he begins to laugh. The cosmic demon then comments that he seems to know how to really fight. Attacking again, the creature hurls a large chunk of rock at him. While dodging, he explains that these monsters live in completely different dimensions. Several creatures then fire fireballs surrounding him on all sides. Reacting quickly, he uses his ability to strike the ground with full force. Riding the massive wave, he attacks the creatures, destroying several with a single blow. He explains that these monsters exist within gaps between the various dimensions. He adds that their sole purpose is to find and eliminate strong opponents. Questioning himself, he wonders if they are strong enough for that. Now understanding the concept, he concludes this strange place is a dungeon. Then the dungeon boss emerges, revealing itself as Carlawler of Fire. Seeing the boss, he realizes he just needs to defeat the monster to leave. Switching to the Mage Guild, screams of despair echo throughout the hall. There, Sharon is informed about the chaotic situation involving Skasa and the Bantu tribe. The blame falls on Jin-song, and the man warns that the guild will be held responsible. Disbelieving, Sharon says she hasn't seen him in a week and wonders what he's done. Looking at the device, she says she can't believe what is happening. Back at the fight, he is questioned by Carlawler about what he is doing. Shouting furiously, he prepares for an all-out attack. Releasing his energy, he charges at the boss monster with his weapon in hand. After the intense battle, he finally manages to defeat the fire dungeon boss. Tired, he prepares for the next phase alongside Delizio. Celebrating, he says he'll finally be returned to the village he was in. But upon teleporting, he is surprised by a completely different scenery than expected. Understanding nothing, he realizes the dungeon isn't over yet and tells Delizzy to look. Looking ahead, he sees bizarre monsters and wonders if they are also demons. Then the boss of the new area appears, revealing herself as Samu, the Storm Conqueror. Seeing the monsters, he recognizes Carlawler and realizes he's on the epic road. He explains it was an old dungeon, but now it seems a little different. Recalling, he says there were 4 bosses with different attributes in that dungeon. Dulasai then realizes they will have to defeat all the bosses to escape. Arriving in the new area, they find Samu sleeping peacefully in a giant flower. Seeing the opportunity, he advances and attacks the monsters protecting the sleeping boss. With the noise, Samu wakes up and asks who he is, still confused by the situation. Smiling, he apologizes and asks ironically if he woke her up. Defending himself, he blocks a monster's attack with his left arm. But immediately after, he is hit very hard by an unexpected blow. Feeling the pain of the impact, he grits his teeth as blood runs down his face. Reacting, he begins slashing all the surrounding monsters with his weapon. Then he advances and lands a powerful punch, finishing off that area's boss. After the victory, the scenery changes, taking him to a completely different place. Delizzy comments it was hard to keep up, but it seemed like the same old thing. Advising his master, he says they need to defeat everything that appears ahead. Soon after, the new boss emerges, introducing himself as Frieder, the frost monster. Calling him an intruder, the creature challenges him to battle and tells him to attack. Running across the battlefield, he advances towards combat against the new boss. With a quick movement, Frieder lands a solid punch on Jin Song's face. Even feeling the blow, he prepares to retaliate with an immediate counterattack. Jumping, he receives a powerful attack from the monster. By the force of the impact, he is thrown backward while the boss feels the damage. Being hit by the attack, he is thrown backward while blood flies. Next, his monstrous form advances and lands a powerful punch on the boss. Frieder tries to defend himself, blocking with a large crystal forming on his arm. Stomping hard on the crystal, he breaks it and deals massive damage to the monster. Then, with a final blow, he finally manages to cut the ice boss in half. After the victory, he is thrown through a portal to the next arena. Crossing the portal, his silhouette appears in the reflection on the new stage's floor. Finally arriving at the last challenge, he faces the final boss and his robotic henchman. Even exhausted and wounded, he takes a deep breath, preparing for the final combat. Introducing himself, the final boss emerges, revealing himself as Juice, the thunder monster. With a look full of determination, he faces the last boss fearlessly. Advancing quickly, Geus attacks his opponent with his electric spear at high speed. Caught by surprise, he is taken down by the boss's electric attack. Then a major explosion occurs, throwing blood and debris everywhere. Fallen and badly wounded, he still manages to smile, panting but ready to continue. After defeating the last boss, a portal opens in the center of the arena. Tired, he says he already expected this, but it was a difficult sequence. He thinks about visiting the shop to buy potions and eat a little. Entering the portal, he is teleported away in a very strong flash of light. Suddenly, the scene changes, showing the volcano from the first dungeon erupting. Looking around, he realizes he is back at the dungeon's first stage. Confused by the situation, he can't understand what is happening there. Seeing meteors falling, he wonders why he returned to that place. Then the ground explodes once again, forcing him to start all over. The cycle repeats. Blood spills across the arena floor. He's thrown back toward the portal, trapped in the same loop. He takes the first step, entering the portal once more to restart the dungeon. A flash of light teleports him to the beginning of the challenge. There is no escape. The volcano erupts again, signaling the start of another round. Arriving at the arena, he faces the exact same scene as before. Delizzy comments on his bad luck, but he just tells him to shut up. Seeing the intruders, the monsters remark that he looks like an interesting opponent. Focused, he declares he's ready this time. He's already cleared this dungeon over 200 times. Yet, even after clearing it so many times, he remains trapped in the same spot. After immense effort, he finally reaches the dungeon's second stage. Tired and wounded, he prepares to face the next wave of challenges. But to his surprise, all the monsters have come back to life. In disbelief, he wonders where the exit is and if he'll ever be able to leave. He begins to suspect the Time Lords are behind all of this. Leaping up, he attacks the monster, which transforms into a whirlwind to defend itself. Confused by the situation, he wonders what kind of creatures these are. Deciding to flee, he runs into the distance thinking he can escape the area. But suddenly, he's thrown backward as if hitting an unseen wall. Looking closely, he realizes an invisible wall surrounds the entire place. With nowhere to go, he takes a direct hit from the monster's attack. Countering, he manages to land a punch on the creature, shattering the invisible barrier. Seeing the opening, Samu charges forward with a shout, ready to attack with everything she has. His face filled with rage, he prepares for the final confrontation against her. Using his weapon, he charges and slices the boss with a fast, precise blow. Surprised by the attack, the boss can't believe what just happened. Realizing the danger of the situation, he knows he needs a new plan. He realizes that even if he defeats everyone, the cycle will just keep repeating. After defeating the bosses, the portal opens yet again to restart. Assessing the situation, he realizes teleport potions don't work here either. Looking at the portal, he realizes the only way out is the gate he came through. Desperate, he wonders what to do while Delizzy suggests a secret exit. Curious, he questions if a secret exit actually exists in this infinite place. Then he remembers. There's a fifth secret area that can appear. Cursing himself, he admits he never cared about that area because it was meant for beginners. Smiling, he realizes the only way to get there is by relying on luck. With a new plan, he declares he'll keep clearing dungeons until the exit appears. With a flash, he returns to the dungeon once more, ready to restart. Sword in hand, he begins fighting again, determined to find the exit. Clearing the first area, he faces Simu, who wonders what exactly he is. After much effort, he defeats more bosses, growing stronger with each victory. Leveling up, he keeps fighting non-stop to reach his goal. Defeating all the bosses, he finally unlocks access to the secret area. Reaching level 55, he prepares for the final challenge. Back in the arena, Simu stares at him, still wondering just who he is. Even exhausted and covered in wounds, his eyes remain focused on his goal. Then the portal trapping him in this infinite cycle opens once more. Walking over defeated enemies, he heads toward the portal to start it all over again. Completely bloodied and desperate, he faces the challenge with a look of pure madness. After more than 300 attempts, even his companion, Taco, seems drained of energy. Panting, he repeats that he must keep defeating bosses until the secret exit appears. Trying to maintain focus, he insists the plan is simple and he will continue. Preparing his weapon, he positions himself for another round of relentless combat. Thinking of the cycle, he believes the next time will be the one that works. Watching the volcano erupt, he thinks this is true hell. With no strength left to continue, he finally collapses completely onto the arena floor. He punches the ground, unleashing all his anger and frustration. Seeing his master crawl, Delisi asks why he's giving up now. Lying on the floor, he holds his companion, utterly hopeless about escaping. Delisi asks why he's crawling around, questioning if he's trying to dig. He replies that he isn't digging, while Taco begs to be released. Standing up, he furiously uses his weapon to destroy the arena floor. Witnessing the scene, Delisi shouts, not understanding what his master is doing. Angrily, he says he's cleared this dungeon over 300 times without success. Shouting that he's done everything, he destroys a hidden symbol on the ground. Punching the ground, he triggers an explosion that completely destroys the arena floor. Amidst the destruction, a pillar hidden beneath the floor begins to rise. Looking into the hole, he takes a deep breath, exhausted but filled with new hope. Grabbing a handful of dirt, he finally understands where the secret exit was. Explaining his theory, he says he just needed to look right underneath himself. Seeing a crack in the energy, he realizes his hunch was right all along. With the opening in the floor, a new path reveals itself along with a portal. Filled with hope, he believes this is finally the way out. Shouting that this has to be it, he prepares for one last effort. Using his weapon, he attacks the center of the portal to force his way through. With the explosion, the floor opens up, revealing the secret passage he had been looking for. Falling through the hole, they are thrown into a dimension filled with giant floating cubes. With a smile on his face, he finally confirms he found what he was looking for. Before him, the immense structure of the secret area is finally revealed in full. Landing firmly, he steps onto the digital surface of the new mysterious area. Realizing it's all part of the dungeon, he begins searching for the exit. Looking at the light beams, he deduces where the exit must be. Suddenly, a giant structure falls from the sky, forcing him to dodge fast. Readying his weapon, he defends against wreckage falling everywhere. Then he senses a strange presence, wondering what is approaching. A bizarre creature emerges from the shadows, revealing its claws for an attack. Attacked by surprise, he's thrown back by the impact. Blocking the attack, he endures the blow as the creature charges full force. Turning his face, he stares down the monster with pure determination. A feline creature appears, revealing itself as the area's true boss. Introducing itself as Mao, the Hidden, the monster prepares for the final battle. Seeing the monster, Delisi warns that it is the true exit from this place. Yelling that it's time, he rushes in with his weapon for the final combat. Leaping between cubes, the creature moves with impressive mid-air agility. He tries to hit the monster with his weapon, but it dodges easily. Even at a disadvantage, he keeps the fury in his eyes and readies the next attack. Dodging blows, he runs through the arena to find an opening in its defense. Going under the monster, he tries a direct attack on its blind spot, but the creature smacks him with its paw, throwing him aside. Even wounded, he manages to land a cut on the monster's side with his weapon. Jumping back, the monster avoids the attack and prepares to counter. Seeing the boss is just playing, he realizes its level is far different. Despite the situation, he smiles, getting ready to use everything he has. saying he has no time to lose. He activates a fast movement skill. Advancing with speed, he attempts a final slash to end the fight. But to his surprise, the monster simply vanishes right in front of him. Warning that it's right there, the monster suddenly appears atop a cube. Shocked by the speed, he can't believe the monster moves so fast. Using its power, the creature fires several projectiles that he struggles to dodge. Smiling, the monster stares at him, ready to continue the massacre. Unable to keep up, he admits the monster's speed is too much for him. Roaring with fury, the creature transforms, revealing an even more monstrous form. Then the monster hits him, throwing him against one of the giant floating cubes. Even feeling the impact, he gets up, ready to continue fighting bravely. And the monster doesn't stop. It attacks him again. Countering, the creature fires a laser that hits a cube, destroying it. Then Jinsong is thrown back, hit by the shockwave. Seizing the chance, the monster throws Jinsong against a cube with full force. Punching the cube, it causes an explosion that blows Jinsong away. Tired, it observes the result of its attack, seeing Jinsong lying on the floor. Meanwhile, Delazi watches him, still worried about the situation and his master's condition. Explaining the situation, Delazi says the monster treats him like a toy for a reason. He reveals that repeated battles have made him much stronger than before, but he adds that there is a much bigger problem they need to face now. With a powerful attack, the monster hits Jinsong squarely, showing its superiority. Looking at the monster from afar, he prepares for the next round of the fight. Cursing the creature, he complains about the arrogant cat that's playing with him. With a meow, the monster stares at him as if amusing itself with the situation. Full of rage, he shouts at the creature, ready to attack with everything. Watching the scene, Delizzy warns that there is a huge power difference between them. Even while fighting, he wonders how it's possible to still be so far from winning. Without understanding, he questions how the power gap can be so great. Desperate, Taco cries, saying it's all over and his master is going to die. Roaring, the monster focuses its energy, preparing for the fight's final attack. With several energy beams, the creature attacks Jinsong, who has no way to escape. Releasing its power, the creature explodes the arena with a massive, devastating attack. Watching the scene, Taco cries, mourning his master's defeat in the final battle. Fallen on the ground, Jinsong is totally wounded and without strength to continue fighting. Then the monster approaches, ready to deal the final blow and end it all. Staring at its prey, the creature prepares to attack, showing its sharp teeth. Surprised, the monster stares at the little creature that dared to challenge it. With a meow, it swats Taco, throwing him far away with a slap. Seeing his friend in danger, he stands up and advances to attack. Leaping, the monster prepares to attack but is surprised by a blow. Firing an energy beam, the creature tries to hit its moving opponent, but he manages to dodge and drives his weapon into the monster's tail. Warning that he got it, he prepares for the final full-force counterattack. With a punch, he hits the monster squarely, releasing all his fury. The blow strikes right in the creature's eye, which feels the impact forcefully. With the punch, he knocks the monster back, finishing the battle. Completely shocked, Taco and Delazy can't believe what they just saw. Even wounded and bleeding, he remains standing with a determined look. From the force of the blow, the monster spits blood, feeling the punch's impact. Releasing his energy, he attacks with everything, destroying the cube behind the monster. Panting, he surprises Delizzy, who asks how he managed to do that. Grabbing one of the monster's claws, he holds it firmly in his hand. Thinking about the humiliation, he says he was treated like a toy by that cat. Seeing the defeated monster, he refuses to accept that in a place like this. With a wounded face, the dungeon boss stares at his opponent with no strength left. Holding his weapon firm, he prepares to end it all at once. Remembering the hell, he says he didn't go through all those challenges repeatedly. Recalling the battles, he yells that he didn't go through all that to die. With Lenny's image in mind, he says he won't die there. Yelling with all his strength, he unleashes an overwhelming wave of power. Hit squarely, the monster faces the final attack unable to react. Using his weapon, he advances for the final attack against the dungeon boss. Spinning in the air, he cuts the monster with a precise and powerful blow. With the blow, the monster screams, feeling the deep cut in its body. Countering, the creature fires a laser that he manages to block with his arm. Then he uses a whip attack, hitting the monster with dark energy. With the dark cut, he manages to gravely wound the boss, spraying blood afar. Even victorious, he stands there, totally exhausted by the intense battle. He says he is tired and his whole body is screaming in pain. Thinking about the situation, he believes it would be easier to just die right there. But with a determined look, he remembers his goals and refuses to give up. Remembering the past, he shouts that he will never give up and run away like before. With a glow, his weapon transforms, gaining a new dark power. Holding the new weapon, he gets ready to finally leave that place. With his new power, he focuses on opening the portal once and for all. Then a portal opens, revealing the dungeon exit and the way back. Using the weapon, he completely destroys the portal, releasing an energy wave. Thanking the monster, he says it was thanks to him that he became stronger. With the portal destroyed, the monster's remains fall apart in the air. With an intense glow, the true dungeon exit finally opens for him. Looking at the new scenery, he prepares to finally return home. Before him, an enormous tower rises in the middle of the ocean, indicating his location. Seeing the scene, Deleuze congratulates him on the victory, saying it was impressive. Decided, he says it's time to go back to Hendenmeyer at once. But suddenly, a giant creature appears, blocking the path to the exit. Confused by the appearance, he cannot understand what is happening there. Suddenly, intense light shines in front of him, revealing a new presence. With a shocked look, he wonders who dares to interfere with his exit. Seeing the giant creature, he faces the new challenge with determination and fury. With its hand, the creature holds one of the floating crystal fragments. Then the creature questions who dares to disturb the order of that sacred space. Over at the guild, cheerful greetings signal the start of a new morning. Two young members meet in the hall, exchanging lively good mornings. They note that Lady Charon seems in an exceptionally good mood today. Reading a document, she chuckles softly, clearly pleased with the news received. She studies a newspaper article featuring a drawing of a massive dragon. The news reports that Skasa has finally been defeated by the adventurer and the Bantu tribe. Caracas explains that an outsider warned them, and Sharon regrets the misunderstanding. She realizes her problems are solved, and she even got an apology gift. Suddenly, crashes right through the ceiling, landing directly on top of her. The impact spills her wine, leaving her completely drenched and paralyzed in shock. Exhausted and injured, Jin Song lies on the floor, unable to move. The room lights begin to flicker, making the atmosphere tense. Furious, she slams the table and demands the creature explain everything right now. Now tied up in the room, he's questioned about what happened at Storm Pass. Invoking his right, he declares he will remain silent, which only irritates Charon. She calls him a liar, so he invents a story that he fell down the stairs. With a serious look, she asks what he's truly hiding from her. Unable to answer, he remains silent, just staring at the floor of the room. Concerned, she asks why he seems so afraid of something. Reminiscing, the scene shows the dimension of cubes where he was previously trapped. In a flashback, he remembers the hidden boss he encountered in the dungeon. With a serious face, he denies it, knowing that monster is something else entirely. Introducing himself, the Cosmic Demon King appears, revealing himself as the Master of the Rift. Warning that Jinsung's existence isn't permitted, the monster prepares to strike. With a wave of its hand, the creature invokes a lava monster to attack Jinsung. Trying to defend himself, he is caught off guard by the creature's fast, powerful assault. Watching the ability, Deleuze notices that the arena floor has completely changed. With one movement, the lava creature attacks with a fire whip. Dodging narrowly, Jinsung manages to escape the strike, which hits the ground. Frustrated, he wonders how he'll defeat a monster as strong as that one. Tired, he says he doesn't have enough energy and needs to get closer. Being held by the monster, he tries to think of a way to escape the situation. But an attack was already heading his way, hitting him full on. It makes Jinsung fly and destroy many cubes, and he destroys more and more cubes without stopping. Taking the full impact, he wonders if this is the end of everything for him. Just then, a rift opens, revealing the silhouette of a man. Falling into the rift, he is swallowed by the energy and thrown far away from there. Called pathetic, he is brutally hurled out of the rift. Even while down, he keeps his gaze steady, refusing to accept defeat. Seeing his master fallen, Deleuze tries to wake him, yelling at him not to give up. Suddenly, a crack forms in space, indicating a new presence there. With a punch, Jinsung shatters the barrier, surprising everyone with his strength. With wide eyes, he tries to process what just happened there. He realizes that just like before, someone helped him escape the situation. Thinking about who it could be, he rules out the goddess, as she wouldn't need to hide. Then he concludes that an unknown third party is watching his every step. Looking ahead, he faces the void, still confused by the revelation. Holding his arm, he prepares to return to the interrogation room. Questioned by Sharon, he says they didn't save him, but that they are toying with him. He says they are taking advantage, but he doesn't know who they are or what they plan. With a serious face, he says he thought he had gotten stronger. Irritated, Sharon slams the table out of patience with his silence. Seeing his state, she surprises him by saying he doesn't have to tell her if he doesn't want to. With a touch, she holds his hand, trying to calm him down after everything. She leans closer to him, showing a gentler, more understanding side. With a smile, she says that for now, she's happy he's back. Blushing, he's left speechless, calling her name with a trembling voice. Pinching his cheek, she stares at him with an expression of pure rage. Showing the bill, she warns that she was worried about her money, which is due tomorrow. Terrified, he just stammers and confirms he's aware of the entire debt. Changing scenes, a large quantity of gold coins fills a dark cave. Now in the elf tunnel, he congratulates Taco on the excellent work they did together. Celebrating with sacks of money, he says he can now use the rest. Then he grabs a gold bar, saying the enemies should appear soon. Seeing his reflection, he decides he needs to get much stronger so he won't be deceived. Delisi asks if he's going to meet Hilder, but he says he's in no rush. Having an argument, Jin-sung talks about debts, but Delisi tells him to shut up. Suddenly, a gold coin spins rapidly, indicating an immediate change of location. Back in the city, a man looks at the sky, questioning what he's seeing. Standing in the street, Delisi asks about the whale, but he says he's already been there. Smiling, he warns that they are going even higher up, leaving Delisi quite confused. Reassuring his partner, he just tells him not to worry about his plan. Climbing an ice mountain, the camera reveals the long path to the top. Staring at the gate, he says their passage ticket will arrive very soon. Explaining the situation, he states that 2 magic circles exist high above them. He reveals one is the magic circle of the fearsome Lord Bakel. Originating from the Sky Castle, this circle prevents anyone from passing a certain altitude. Looking at Sharon, he says that's why it was always considered just a legend. Showing an ancient painting, he reveals the land beyond the skies, the Celestial Kingdom. Sharon confirms the place exists, but it is currently in grave danger. Gazing out the window, he mentions the West Coast port will soon face disaster. Seeing an airship falling, he explains the port is about to be destroyed by a Margatha. As the ship crashes, massive destruction spreads across the entire city. Jin-sung adds that a celestial in need of help will also appear there. Recounting his vision, he declares that this is the future he foresaw. Having a sudden new vision, he reveals he can see the celestial's name. Clutching his head, he says her name is Marlene Kitska, which surprises even him. He explains that she is the court lady who supports the princess. Questioned by Sharon, he prepares to reveal how he knows all of this. But Jin-sung reveals that all of those events actually happened 2 weeks ago, leaving her shocked. Confused, she doesn't understand how that's possible, calling his story serious. With a smile, he mentions there was a hiccup with his foresight, which worries her. Thinking to himself, he realizes it's already been a month since he returned from that place. Weary, she comments on Bakel's magic circle. They still have no solution for the problem. Sharon explains it was a miracle Marlene managed to pass through the magic circle at all. With a smile, he asks how they will ever manage to pierce the Apostle's circle. Then Sharon suggests that Bakel's own powers might be able to break his circle. Jin-sung clarifies that it's not Bakel himself, but rather his powers that can solve everything. Filled with hope, Sharon realizes that perhaps with his powers, it really is possible. Seeing that he helped, he says he has a favor to ask of her. The scene changes and a complex mechanism begins operating with intense energy. Sweating profusely, a mysterious man operates the machine with great difficulty and concentration. With a smile, a woman observes the progress, appearing satisfied with the result. Outside, the massive machine starts expelling smoke indicating it is running. 2 adventurers jump in to kickstart the machine's mechanism. Desperate, a woman begs for the machine to work correctly. With a look of pure fury, she concentrates on the enhancement result. Suddenly, the machine starts to shake violently, indicating something has gone terribly wrong. The force throws her backward as the machine billows smoke. With a shocked expression, she stares at the result, unable to believe what just happened. In her hands, the item crumbles into pieces, proving the enhancement failed. Desperate, she screams and throws herself onto the ground, mourning the loss of her item. Watching the scene, a man laughs, commenting that someone is calling it quits for the day. Lady Kiri then appears, inviting anyone to seize the chance to enhance an item. Arriving at the location, he calls out for Lady Kiri, who receives him with surprise. Introducing himself, he claims to be the president of the Abnormal Phenomena Response Committee. Explaining his visit, he states he is there to ask her for a favor. She asks if he intends to use her item enhancer entirely for free. Looking at Ginseng, she mentions owing Sharon a favor for teaching her. Looking at her hand, she says she would accept the request because Sharon took care of her. She thanks him in relief, only to be interrupted when he says that free is too much. Extending her hand, she declares a 50% discount is the best she can do. Confused, he says she is misunderstanding everything, unaware of what she's talking about. Tosses a bag of money, he announces that he doesn't need any kind discount. Looking up at the sky, Jin Song clarifies that the request isn't about using the machine. Showing the crystals, he explains that he needs the ingredients for item enhancement. Desperate, she screams, questioning why he wants the protection passes. Furious, she shouts that they take a long time to make and he wants them for free. Seeing the prices, Jin Song thinks he can't back down. He needs those passes. Taking a step forward, Jin Song says she is putting him in a difficult position. Revealing his status, he explains that working for the guild makes him a government employee. With disdain, Jin Song asks why he should care about that. With a sinister smile, he asks if she is sure she can handle the consequences. Irritated, she calls it an irrational request, but he just turns away. Accusing him of blackmail, she becomes furious, but he asks her not to use harsh words. Then he asks about the machine's inspection and if her taxes are up to date. Running inside, he complains about the lack of a fire extinguisher in the building. Amazed by the dust, he threatens to report everything to the city administration. With no choice, she caves and he offers a 70% discount. Thanking her with relief, he says she is very generous to accept the deal. Back at the guild, he laughs, satisfied with having acquired everything he needed. With a smile, he confirms that he now has enough protection passes for everything. Then he reveals that all his equipment has been enhanced and amplified to the maximum. Excited, he declares they are finally ready for the vengeance he has waited so long for. With a serious look, he stares at the horizon, ready for the next mission. As he walks through the city, a mysterious figure follows his footsteps closely from the shadows. Showing a brooch, the figure reveals their affiliation and continues the pursuit from a distance. Suddenly, the figure appears right in front of him, blocking the path with their presence, revealing his identity. The man says it's been a long time, surprising Jinzong with his sudden appearance.